Ever since he was a kid, this guy loved to read manhwa. It was literally a different world for him. However, every time the boy read a new story, he was saddened. It was the main characters that disappointed him. They weren't cool at all. What's really cool is looking carefree in normal situations, but overwhelming everyone with unimaginable power in their hour of need. That is so cool. The kid always wanted to be a character who hides his real power. As time went on, his main occupation became help that no one will know about. One day, he helped an old lady pull a heavy cart while she was out of sight. But suddenly, the elderly woman turned around. To her surprise, she saw no one behind her. As she continued to pull the cart, the old woman could not understand for a long time why it was so easy for her. I mean, you don't usually get up a mountain that easy. It's like she had help. The guy almost got caught that day. But luckily, he didn't. After that, he decided to call it a day, so he definitely wouldn't get caught. This is what his life looked like for 10 years. But in the end, after such a huge amount of help that no one found out about, the guy was hit by an 8-ton truck. At the same moment, the young man woke up with a scream, lying on the ground. He stood up abruptly and looked around, trying to figure out where he was. The last thing he remembered before he died was being hit by a truck. This is the world of sword and magic, explained to him by a mysterious girl who suddenly appeared out of nowhere. Holding out her hand to the young man, she said solemnly that she had been waiting for him, the chosen one with a pure soul. This girl is a goddess of this world, and her name is Hersha. She was waiting for the guy to reincarnate him. The dumbfounded young man can't understand what waited means. Does she really know who he is? Yes, of course I do. You're one of the few people that helps others not for the sake of being noticed, the goddess Hersha explained to him. The girl also narrated that besides her, many other gods were impressed by the good deeds of this lad. I see, the chagrined young man muttered quietly, and he tried so hard not to let anyone know. But he couldn't fool the gods. Such an unexpected answer greatly surprised the goddess Hersha. Laughing, she remarked that, as expected, this boy was indeed very entertaining. I, goddess Hersha, want to give you a blessing. You can be anything you want in this world. Hero, demon, king, dragon, I don't care if I'm the ruler of hell. Now a guy can choose for himself what he wants to be. HSC, the determined guy immediately replied, throwing the goddess into a stupor. Hersha decides to ask him again what he just said. Then the young man shouted again that he wants to be an HSC. He asks to make him a hidden strength character. Shivering with frustration, the guy explains that he's always missed it. He surreptitiously helped people get rid of the heat, covertly cleaned the streets and swept the school grounds. But that's not the real HSC. It's all too easy. Normal HSC is always ignored without noticing its incomparable power. But in the end, he shows tremendous strength at the right time. After listening to the boy's wishes, the goddess seemed to understand what he meant. To have great power, but to keep it hidden and not to attract the attention of others. I get it. You will be reborn as a commoner in the new world. Hersha began her speech. But even though you'll be a commoner, your power will be greater than a hero, demon king, or dragon. And as soon as anyone finds out, your heart will explode. Just as you wished, you will become a man who has to hide his power all the time. Upon hearing this, the frightened young man shouted, explaining that he would not agree to such conditions. Why blow up your heart? But the goddess no longer listens to the boy. She dreams of his new life in which he will receive great power, but will walk the road of loneliness. While the boy is hysterically begging not to be sent away, Hersha is already beginning to pray that he will succeed. It's been 2 years since entering the new world. The distraught young man still can't understand why. As in most manhwa, the gods don't like to listen to the end. Oh, okay. Anyway, it doesn't matter now. A lot of water has passed since then, and there are more important things to do now. Besides, the boy had become the strongest man he wanted to be. I can't complain about that. Now with just a couple of blows, a guy can put a whole pack of high-level monsters to eternal sleep. Huh, this power is really refreshing. Taking down 5 wolves was no problem at all for the young man. It was getting boring. Suddenly, another wolf ran out from behind the trees. Looking back, the boy noticed that the monster, frightened by his strength, had already managed to scurry away a decent distance. Incidentally, if you think of the condition that the goddess Hersha had set for the guy, you can see that his heart didn't explode when the monsters found out about his power. Anyway, it was only for the best. As he thought about it, the kid jumped into the air and then landed on the wolf's back with lightning speed, punching a huge hole in its body with his fist. The boy has an assignment today. He needs to catch and exterminate all the monsters in the neighborhood. Great. After he'd dealt with the last wolf, there were no monsters around. No humans either. Which means it's time to head back to the village. In this world, a boy who dreams of being an inconspicuous hero acting from the shadows has reincarnated into a commoner named Jurian. The boy is already 9 years old this year. A few minutes later, the young man returned to town. An exasperated girl holding a broom in her hand calls for Jurian. She angrily asks the boy where he has disappeared to again without warning. The boy apologizes to his sister, explaining that he has a stomachache. The excited red-haired girl asks her brother to warn her about such things next time. After all, he is too weak and therefore should not walk alone. Jurian must know how many wolf packs there are around. It's very dangerous to be alone right now. After apologizing again, the boy remarks that there are not many wolves in the area. Hearing these ridiculous words, the children standing nearby ask the boy if he meant what he just said. Usually, these monsters make it impossible to even go out to the vegetable garden. Only the prayers of the priests help them. Guys can only do the harvest thanks to them. Listening to their conversations, Jurian realizes that all this is his merit, not that of some priests. The very fact that people don't know about his involvement gives him incredible pleasure. But suddenly, while he was thinking about it, a sturdy middle-aged man came up behind him and grabbed the boy by the hair, calling him a piece of shit. "Stop hanging around, you damn orphans!" The orphanage director yelled in anger, throwing the boy to the opposite side of the room with all his might. Running up to her injured brother, the sister worriedly asked if he was okay. Meanwhile, the angry man, looking at the boy with disgust, added that he had accepted the kid because he was small. But even when he grew up a little, he was still weak and useless. Hearing no response from her brother, the excited red-haired girl asked him once more how he was feeling. However, this little masochist seemed to enjoy it all. Mimicking a haggard voice, the boy turned away so that no one would see his satisfied smile, and silently apologized. That's not really what makes Jurian happy. It's that he never got caught today. No one ever found out that he was the one who dealt with the monsters. This is what a true HSC is all about. He's so happy. Jurian's new story takes place in a rather nice medieval village. The boy himself lives in an orphanage with other children, and although all these children are orphans, they truly believe that the principal loves and cares for them. Even though they are orphans, they are happy. With fake smiles stretched across their faces, they sweep the streets of the settlement in the hope that the people living there will give them food. Joyful settlers observe this almost every day. It is incredible that the children are still cleaning today. There's a rumor going around that the guys volunteered to work. They're so kind. It's all thanks to the principal. He took in orphans who had nowhere else to go, and at the same time gave them such a good upbringing. As a result, almost every day someone gives the children some food to cheer them up and thank them for their work. Today, one of the residents decided to give the children a cooked chicken. By the end of the day, the dinner table was full of delicious food given to the orphans from the settlers as a thank you. However, as expected, they worked not of their own free will, but to please the orphanage director and fill his stomach. The kids, on the other hand, who have worked all day, have potatoes for lunch again. Looking at such meager rations after such a grueling day of work, Jurian struggles to hold back tears. How the hell did a chicken ever turn into a potato? Not surprisingly, the boy is not the only one outraged. The girl sitting across the table asks her sister why they are eating one potato when today her aunt gave them a whole chicken. Chewing the potatoes contentedly, the kid sitting next to her advises the girl to just eat. Better a potato in your hand than sitting hungry on the street. Jurian agrees with her. What the hell does that damn principal even think he's doing, taking away their honestly earned food? At this moment, the red-haired girl unwrapped some cloth in her hands and asked her friends not to worry. She had something special to do today. When the children saw what she was holding in her hand, they lit up with happiness. It's eggs! The girl said that when her aunt gave them eggs and chicken, she hid some in her sinus. She immediately asked her friends to eat it quickly, or mash it with the potatoes so they wouldn't be noticed. The overjoyed children, gazing admiringly at the normal food, chanted "Yai" to their little sister together. In all the time he had already lived in this world, Jurian had never seen so many hard-boiled eggs at once. As he stared mesmerized at the food in his hand, the red-haired girl called out to him, holding out her egg to the boy, adding that he could eat it. The sister explained that the brother was too thin and one egg would not be enough for him to eat. If it goes on like this, the principal might eventually kick him out. Awkwardly waving it off, Jurian clarifies that he's fine and the girl can eat it herself. Grabbing the stubborn boy by his rags, his sister indignantly shouted at him to eat the egg, or it would go to waste. But suddenly they both realized how strange the scene looked from the outside. While the embarrassed girl was trying to find the words to get out of this awkward situation, Jurian had already laughed, again asking her sister to eat the egg herself. The moment she yelled again that she didn't want to eat, the guy remembered something. When he first came to this world, he had no food or roof over his head. Every time the boy approached the grocery store, the angry salesman would wriggle out of his way, demanding the kid get the hell away from his store and not scare away customers with his worthless appearance. Life as an orphan is hell. You have no one to protect you, and violence happens all the time. And even if everyone looks down on Jurian and treats him cruelly, the boy will still not be able to take revenge on them. He is strictly forbidden to show his superhuman strength. So you're really alone? The red-haired girl who approached him said pityingly. Squatting down in front of the boy, she introduced herself as Ella and handed him a boiled potato. Ella invited the boy to go with her to the orphanage, telling him that although the director was bad, there was a roof over his head and food. Seeing such a kind girl, Jurian could not believe his ears and eyes for some time. At the same second, her sister's stomach rumbled, making her very embarrassed. After bringing the boy to the orphanage, the girl holding his hand asked the director to take this child. She agreed to take responsibility for this boy, and then confidently promised that he would do a good job. She's so cute. Turning to his sister, Jurian took the egg from her hand. After that, he stuffed this egg into her mouth, while suggesting that they go to the Magic Academy together. If they go there, they can go to classes and eat delicious food to their heart's content. Hearing about the delicious food, the other two orphans shouted happily that they wanted to go there with them too. After hugging her brothers and sister, Ella agreed and suggested that they all try to enroll there together. They'll eat the most delicious food there. They'll study instead of working here, and will survive at all costs to continue living together. The next morning, the principal informed the children that he had great news for them. The man excitedly asked the boys to congratulate Ella because she was going to be adopted today. Hearing this, Jurian looked at his little sister in shock. Trying not to cry, the red-haired girl apologizes to her friends for not being able to stay with them. In turn, the boys comfort her by congratulating her wholeheartedly. And that's not the last of the news, suddenly uttered the happy orphanage director. Jurian, you will be a sacrifice to the god of wolves. Congratulations, said an eerily smiling man, placing a hand on the boy's shoulder. Suddenly dumbfounded, Ella shrieked, reminding the principal that he had said something completely different. He had promised that he would take care of Juriana if she was adopted. Without listening to her, the man asks the kid if he knows why the wolf packs haven't shown up lately. The boy replied that he had heard about it perfectly well. It was all thanks to the priests praying for the good of the village. However, the director explained that none of this was true. They don't really show up because we feed them regularly. The wolf god loves young meat, the man said bloodily, glaring ruthlessly at Jurian. He explained that the boy was short and thin, so he would not be a good worker even after he grew up. A timely sacrifice will save the village. And so the other children should congratulate this boy for being so honored. After saying that, Jurian finally guessed what the orphans were kept here for. Principal! Ella suddenly shouted out. I'll be the victim myself! Please don't hurt Jurian! After these insolent words, the principal couldn't stand it and already prepared to start beating the girl. But at the last moment, he stopped his fist in front of her face, realizing that the goods couldn't be harmed. Buyers will be angry and won't purchase this girl if a man mutilates her. The principal advised Ella to shut up, or else she would have to sacrifice not only Jurian, but the rest of the children as well. At the same moment, the man ordered all the orphans to grab their brooms and get to work. All except Jurian. What's he gonna do now? Frustrated, sitting in prison, the boy with the wreath on his head thinks about how he can get out of this problematic situation. Maybe secretly deal with that wolf god and then go on a secret journey? Suddenly, the boy heard someone's familiar voice calling to him. Glancing at the front door, Jurian notices a man he clearly didn't expect to see in this place. What's this Ella doing here? Looking at her dumbfounded, the boy asks what she is doing here and where her long hair has gone. Laughing, Ella touched the ends of her red hair, explaining that she had cut it herself to appear similar to Jurian's hair. Jurian, we don't have time to talk! Swap clothes with me! The girl suddenly shouted. Taking off her sweatshirt, Ella explains that even though these clothes are for girls, the guy is skinny and should fit. The dumbfounded boy asks what the clothes have to do with anything and what she's even talking about. I told you I'd be a victim, the girl said quietly, holding her sweater in her hands. Still not understanding her intentions, Jurian frightenedly asks her if she even knows what it means to be a victim. Smiling sadly, Ella said she knew all too well. Her younger brother was also a victim. What she had just said shocked the boy. Sis said that when she first met Jurian, she thought her late brother had come back to life. They are very similar, and so the girl wanted to take care of the kid. I don't want my little brother to die again, so run as far away as you can, Ellie said, looking at the boy. Continuing to stare at her dumbfounded, Jurian can't even say a word. Determined, he asks his sister in a trembling voice why they should switch places if they can run away together. Ella explained, holding out her sweater to him, that they'd be caught too quickly if they did that. The boy should know how fast adults run. She can't understand why Jurian is procrastinating. It's a good idea. The principal will start beating her when he sees the hair. He will do this for a very long time before coming to his senses. This is enough time for his brother to escape from the village. Walking over to the boy, Ella removed the wreath from him. Putting it on her head, her sister asked Jurian to live in her place. The place of her adoption isn't much different from this one, and so she'd better help her brother survive. Hitting himself on his knee with his fist in despair, Jurian can't understand how a 10-year-old girl can say such a thing. This world is incredibly cruel. And even with all the power the guy has, what can he do? But it was too late to think. Behind the boys, the door opened, and an angry orphanage director ran into the prison. Ella, what happened to your hair? The man asked in surprise. While saying this, he clutched the knife tightly in his hand. With a startled look at the principal and what he holds in his hand, Ella stammeringly tries to explain everything to him. However, the man no longer needed excuses. Grabbing her by the throat, he lifted the girl above the ground and swept her up, saying that she was a very important commodity. But in this condition, the price will drop considerably. What the hell did she do? Sis! Shouted a dumbfounded Jurian, jumping up from his seat. The boy realizes that if he does not intervene with the power given to him, Ella will be beaten to death for such a transgression. But in that instant, he immediately felt an incredible heaviness in his heart. Jurian immediately realized that if he made one wrong move right now, his heart would shatter into small pieces, instantly killing him. Is this what the goddess Hersha was talking about? While the scared-to-death kid was wondering what to do, the principal squeezed Ella's neck with such force that blood spurted from the girl's mouth. With an emotionless glance at the wreath on her head, the man understood everything. Does she really want to be victimized just like her stupid little brother? Upon realizing this, the orphanage director laughed mockingly. It seems you didn't fill in one entertaining fact. I was the god of wolves, the man said bloodily, looking mercilessly at the girl. This is the man who killed her brother. After giving the meat and skin to the monsters, he sold the organs for a good price. Who knew you were so much more valuable dead? It's a great honor for such useless orphans. He was naive to the very end. He said he was happy to be a victim. Couldn't work, so he was useful somehow. Ha ha ha. So naive. Ha ha ha. Ella, however, could no longer hear his mocking taunts. She was dead. At this time, Jurian continued to stand still as he hopelessly watched the orphanage director senselessly kill his sister. He couldn't save her, even with powers greater than any creature in the damn world. He just stood there, watching her die, and did nothing. Jurian, your little sister is gone, the headmaster said inhumanly, looking at the despairing boy. Ella, who was worried about you, is gone. You're the one responsible for her death. If you weren't here, Ella wouldn't have come to rescue you today either. But don't worry, you'll see each other again soon. Staring hopelessly into the void, Jurian can't understand why he hesitated. Why didn't he do what he should have done? With a surprised look at the kid, the principal interjected what the kid had just said. That's right, the guy said it out loud. He was desperate. He didn't care what happened next. And yet, why do you want to become an HSC? Goddess Hersha asked the young man 2 years ago. Isn't the fate of a hero or demon king much simpler? Is it so important that no one sees his actions? After thinking for a bit, the guy explained that a hero and a demon king must use their power for the sake of the peoples of humans and demons. And I don't like it, Jurian pronounced. Our goals are not the same. I want to use my power for the sake of those I myself wish to protect. After saying that, Jurian beheaded the orphanage director and shattered the entire prison with a single wave of his hand. The power of this all-destroying blow was so strong that the shockwave split the clouds high in the sky. The dead Ella fell out of the headmaster's hands and the wreath flew off her head. Moving closer, the boy took her in his arms and sat on his lap. Sis, I'm sorry I'm late, softly muttered the saddened boy. But suddenly, Jurian noticed that the girl in his arms began to show signs of life. She's still breathing. However, If she doesn't get help right now, she will definitely die. Fortunately, right now, the most powerful being in this world is sitting next to her. At the same second, Jurian set about curing his little sister with healing magic. Ella was getting better with each passing moment. The traces of blood and strangulation have completely disappeared, and the girl is breathing freely. I'm relieved it's not too late. But it seems that Jurian did break the condition, and now must suffer the punishment of the gods. Luckily, the guy is ready to accept his fate. Closing his eyes, he realized that he had no regrets now. At this moment, a loud heartbeat sounded. When the boy opened his eyes, he couldn't immediately understand why he was okay, and his heart didn't burst into pieces. Continuing to hold Ella in his arms, a puzzled Jurian looked at the corpse of the orphanage director lying in the corner. Remembering the way he had finished him off, the kid realized the reason why he was still alive. If the guy kills before the victim realizes his true power, he won't die. Thanks to the goddess Hersha, Jurian was brought into this world. And then he saved Ella from the creepy orphanage director. And it happened 4 years ago. Standing in the deep forest, Jurian stares hopelessly at the huge high-level monster that crawled out from behind the trees in front of him. At that instant, the unknown creature's eyes lit up with a bright red light. Realizing the hopelessness of his situation, the boy cried out in fear. How could he have forgotten to drink milk this morning? Damn, 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 damn! And so ungrown in 4 years! Shouted the kid, looking around his frail body in panic. While he was counting on his fingers what the average height of a 13-year-old usually was, the enraged monster had already struck out at him. Saying that he didn't care about him right now, Jurian punched a huge hole in the high-level creature's body with one sweep of his hand. Even though the height remained the same, you could tell from the feeling that the strength had even increased a little bit. When the monster's head hit the ground, the boy looked at it interestedly. Will eating deer antlers make me taller? Jurian asked uncertainly to himself, smiling awkwardly. Whatever the case, as before, this guy remains the strongest. That same year, Ella and Jurian became old enough to take the entrance exams for the Magical Academy. Standing in front of them, Sister Arlene asked the children if they had prepared well for their exams. Sister Arlene sheltered the boys in her church after the principal died. When the children answered that they had prepared themselves, the joyful woman praised them. Surely there must be a reason why the Lord took the principal to himself and allowed them to live. She hoped that his blessing would help the two of them in the exam as well. Ella and Jurian thanked Sister Arlene, promising that they would definitely get in. Magic Academy. It's their dream place where they wanted to escape from the orphanage. It's also the school that Jurian himself dreamed of going to. The last 4 years had been too boring. All he did was secretly slay monsters. But now people will ignore the kid out in the open. Isn't that the main point of academies in the fantasy world of sword and magic? The underrated protagonist. Closing his eyes, Jurian struggles to hold back a satisfied laugh. He is so excited. There it is. The Royal Academy of Magic, the academy that was founded by the ruling family. A school that nurtures everyone's talents without looking at status. It's also that people can stand up to monsters and demons. And today is the entrance exam. With a grin, Nobleman Chris observes that everything is as expected of a royal academy. The nobility can be felt even at the gate. Then he cast a thoughtful glance at the students walking nearby. Most of them have blue brooches. That means they're honor students like Chris. But suddenly, the kid noticed something surprising. The girl walking nearby had a red brooch on her chest. Was she a princess of the royal family? Laughing nervously, Chris realized that this year's exam would most likely be a tough one. Jurian, don't be nervous, came a trembling female voice from nearby. Seeing those who had just entered the academy grounds, Chris cast a disdainful glance at them. What the hell is this? These two have black brooches. Leading her brother behind her, Ella asks him in a trembling voice not to worry and explains that they just need to act normal. Keeping his hands in his pockets, Jurian notices that his sister is the only one here who is worried. But suddenly, the hysterical laughter of a nobleman was heard nearby. Scratching the back of his head, Chris says that, of course, statuses aren't important here. But why did the lower beings think they could enter the Magic Academy? The other entrants can't understand what the plebeians with black brooches have forgotten here either. They probably can't even read. Laughing, they remarked that it was even better. There would be 2 less people in the competition. Chris remarks that since these 2 are finished anyway, we can at least give them a try. The nobleman advises the orphans to thank His Majesty for this chance to embarrass themselves in front of the nobles. However, Jurian wasn't hurt in the slightest by these words. Laughing contentedly, the young man realized that this was what he wanted. Yes, this is how it should be. A classic plot development for a character that hides strength. Lowering her gaze, a pissed-off Ella said she didn't care about what these people said. When the sister turned around and told her brother to follow her, the boy asked her where she had gone. Without turning around, the red-haired girl asked Jurian not to listen to these people. They don't value people and their abilities, they value status. Catching up with Ella, Jurian looked at the nobles with pity. He wished he could stay here. His sister had ruined the fun. Soon the 29th entrance exam began. The head of the Magic Academy Magus explains the task of today's exam. The goal of the students of the Magic Academy is to protect all people with sword and magic. That is why he will train the basic skills of prospective students for enrollment. Standing in the arena and listening to Magus's speech, Jurian, holding back a satisfied smile, hears the nobles around him whispering about his black brooch. What are commoners doing here? Can he even lift a sword? At this moment, the head of the Magic Academy handed over the floor to instructor Karyunpi, who would test the sword skills. The man explains that in order to pass the test, students must first take a practice sword, and then chop the target behind me with a single blow. The instructor added, cutting the dummy without even looking at it. After seeing this, the students can't believe that this man chopped up a target with such ease using a regular piece of paper. This is too cool. Walking over to the new training mannequin, Karyunpi took some sort of list in his hand and asked the incoming people to come up one by one. The first was Tian from a noble family. When the girl picked up the sword, the examiner asked her to start when she was ready. Then Tian wondered if she would be disqualified if she didn't chop it up the first time. The instructor explained that this is not entirely true. The academy does not have inflated expectations for students. They will still be on the level of children. That is why the girl should try to show something special and give her best. After his words, Tian gathered her thoughts and delivered her most powerful punch. In the end, she cut through the mannequin as far as the middle. After recording the result, Karyunpi asked the next person to come up. Nobleman Chris also cut through the target exactly to the middle. Rishel with the green brooch was no exception. With a powerful swing, he sliced the mannequin down the middle. Looking surprised at the list, the instructor next called out to Ella. When her sister shouted that she was here, Jurian wished her luck. He feels like he can get through with a cut to the middle. And that's why Ella can definitely do it. Turning back to her caring brother, the red-haired girl thanked him heartily. When she picked up the sword, the examiner asked her to start when she was ready. At this time, the blue-robed students standing nearby are ridiculing the girl, not wanting to believe that they have to take an exam with this filth. She certainly won't cut through half of it. Trying to ignore these assholes, a focused Ella exhaled, preparing to strike. She failed to protect Jurian 4 years ago. She can't afford to show weakness at such a crucial moment. In the same second, the red-haired girl sliced the targets in half with a single swing of her sword. Noticing this, even instructor Karyunpi's mouth dropped open in surprise. The nobles watching can't believe their eyes. How could the black brooch be the first to chop the mannequin in half? Maybe it was the sword. Smiling, Ella promised herself again that she would be the one to protect Jurian because he was very weak. Meanwhile, the instructor continues to look at the girl suspiciously. A magic bar is set in the middle of the target. Even after hitting it with all their might, there's no way students should be able to cut it. Just physical strength would not be enough to make a full cut. To do that, this girl needed to reinforce the weapon with magic. But it's difficult even for adults. And the girl did it subconsciously. She's incredibly talented. Immediately following Ella is Jurian's turn. Taking the sword in his hands, the boy got into a fighting stance. The examiner also asked him to start when he was ready. Instructor Karyunpi wondered what her younger brother would show. Is he as strong as his sister? In the next second, Jurian landed his strongest blow on the dummy. What the examiner and the nobles saw shocked them. That boy really is an unimaginable weakling. He didn't even cut halfway through. As expected of a black brooch, commoners are so weak because they have nothing to eat. Disappointedly looking at the list, the instructor realized that the boy was not as talented as his sister. In turn, Jurian himself, turning away from everyone, again could not contain a satisfied smile. A few minutes later, the magic test began. The instructor for this test will be Chi Li. The student's task today is to take a magic tool and hit the targets behind the examiner's back. At that moment, the boy with the blue brooch raised his hand, explaining that he couldn't use magic. However, the instructor explained that it didn't matter. A special tool would create water instead of its owner if the latter could not control magic. The first to be tested will be Chris. Taking the magic tool in his hand, the guy immediately shot out a powerful stream of water without hesitation. The young man showed quite a good result from the first time hitting exactly in the center of the target. While he chuckled contentedly, the other students with blue brooches praised him. The instructor then asked Chris to return to his seat, then immediately, after asking if Jurian was present, summoned him. As he got closer, a joyful fellow shouted that he was here. The examiner immediately asked the boy to come over and take Chris's wand. However, when Jurian reached out his palm to take the magic tool, the nobleman deliberately dropped it from his hand. Glaring haughtily at the kid, Chris simply threw his wand on the ground. "Don't even think of getting anything from a nobleman, you filthy commoner," he said, casting a scornful glance at the boy. For his part, Jurian continues to stand with his arm outstretched, looking dumbfounded at Chris. At that moment, as a worried Ella ran out to try to help her brother, Instructor Chili told the guys to stop fighting amongst themselves. Picking up the magical instrument from the ground, the boy asks his little sister not to worry about him. Thanks to this dude, absolutely everyone is looking up to Jurian now, and that's something to be happy about for someone like this kid. It's going to be a real failure. Jurian would finally become the person he had wanted to be all his past and present life. He will become the perfect character that hides strength. This is an excellent stage for failure. Pulling his wand out in front of him, trying to use minimal effort, Jurian cast a powerful water spell. Staring fearfully at the huge water sphere in front of him, the guy can't figure out what's going on. Seeing what he was doing, the examiner and Ella's mouths dropped open in surprise. The rest of the students were also looking at what was happening with genuine shock. Canceling this incredible spell, Jurian smiled nervously. Looking at the broken magic wand, the boy realized he was in huge trouble. The Magic Academy entrance exam is in full swing. The main character was diligent in sticking to his hidden power concept even on the magic test. However, as is usually the case, things did not go according to plan at the most crucial moment. His magic tool exploded. Does this simpleton really have that much mana? While the nobles and the instructor stared at him in surprise, a nervous, sweaty Jurian stood fearfully with his broken wand in his hand, repeating every time that he was in trouble. But suddenly someone shouted out that the problem was with the tool. This thing was defective. A pissed-off Chris yelled hysterically that this commoner couldn't destroy a functioning wand with his paltry mana. The other nobles, laughing nervously, agreed with him. Everyone passes the test with the same wand. It was bound to break at some point. It exploded right after Chris's attempt. This commoner has no luck at all. Trying to hold back tears of happiness, Jurian is relieved and mentally thanks Chris. Besides, why was this magical tool so weak? It broke from a small drop of the guy's power. The boy just can't get caught right after he has become a character with hidden strength. It's better not to relax. After that, the head of the Magic Academy announced the final test. Teams of 3 would enter the forest, kill a magical bear, and bring its tusk. Magus added that it doesn't matter how good the students' skills or their mana are if they can't defeat the monsters. Everyone here must prove their bravery. While Jurian is thinking about how he can fulfill this monster hunting test, his sister leaned over and called out to her brother. Ella reminds them that there is only one step left to fulfill their dream. They must do everything they can to get there. "Sis, yes, let's try our best," the boy answered her cheerfully. At this point, Magus announced that teams should be assigned according to the color of their brooch's glow. At the same second, Ella's red light on her chest lit up. As he approached her, the gray-haired guy told his partner that he had finally found their third man. Looking at Ella, the young man asked her to come over to them, explaining that their squad would go straight into the forest. The astonished nobles standing behind can't understand how an ordinary commoner could be on the same team as a princess. It must be luck. She's just lucky. Taking a satisfied look at his little sister, Jurian relaxed, realizing that she was fortunate enough to be on a team with strong people. Wishing her brother good luck, the red-haired girl headed towards her squad. Waving back at her, the saddened boy realized one terrible truth. Unlike the others, his brooch was still black. Why isn't it glowing? Looking at him with disdain, the other students behind him whispered that they didn't expect anything else from a commoner. They were very lucky that they didn't end up on the same team with such a weakling. Smiling awkwardly, Jurian is certainly pleased that they continued to treat him this way. But doesn't he really have a team? Suddenly, a guy and a girl came up behind him, explaining that they didn't have a glow either. That means they're on the same team. "Jurian? You're Jurian, aren't you?" the green-eyed guy with glasses asked, looking admiringly at his new partner. The young man introduced himself as Rishal and said that he had observed the boy during the test. He immediately offered to give his best in the last stage of the test. With an embarrassed look away, the girl behind him identified herself as Tien. Happy to realize that he had a team after all, Jurian was relieved to say that he would do his best. At this moment, the student standing nearby with violet-colored glowing brooches began to mock the three of them demonstratively. Look at that! Black and green have teamed up. The worst of the worst. This is also the fourth time this loser has tried to pass the test. He's literally useless. On the other hand, he's just a commoner with nothing to show for it. Who is this girl? An abandoned noblewoman? Laughing, the other students sarcastically remarked that this team was just perfect. Looking at them in surprise, Jurian can't understand what they are talking about. His fourth attempt and a jilted noblewoman? Everything is so perfect that the guy can't even believe that such coincidences happen. We can still pass the test, right? The boy asked his companions excitedly. Hearing these words, the partners looked at him in surprise. Where did this boy get this kind of enthusiasm? Rishal said happily, running up to him, that this was exactly what he had expected from Jurian. He had indeed been right about him. A calm and confident demeanor among the nobles. The green-eyed boy would like to learn it from him as well. I feel like you should be recognized by others. Jurian, let's definitely get into the academy, Rishal shouted delightedly, leaving the boy bewildered. Then a concerned Tian wondered if it would work out for them. She explained that she seemed to have failed the magic and sword tests. Jurian looked at her puzzled, and for a while he tried to figure out why she had said that. What did it have to do with the third test? Stop! Tests of magic and sword? When the boy realized that he really hadn't shown even the most basic of abilities in any way, his face poured with horror. Did I fail too? Jurian uttered in a quiet, trembling voice, dousing himself with cold sweat. How could he do that? He and his sister had promised each other that they would work their asses off to pass the tests. Staring hopelessly into the distance, the boy realized that he had set his little sister up. Rishal, however, came up behind him and told the boy not to worry. They still had a chance to get in. His partner explained that although it was nothing to be proud of, this was the fourth time he had taken the test. So he knows everything about everything. In fact, failing the previous two tests would not prevent him from entering the academy. That's because hunting monsters gives you the most points. And if they all join forces together, they can definitely pass. While Jurian listens to him admiringly, Tien standing behind him can't understand why this guy is acting tough. What a relief. Jurian will be able to go with his sister after all. However, his jubilation did not last long. At the first encounter with the enemy, he had to cover his partners with his own body to prevent the bear from burning them with its fiery breath. Running away from the monster, a panicked Rishal shouts that he doesn't want to die, and at the same time asks the young lady why she can't do anything, since she is a noblewoman. Some time passed, and the only thing left to be heard in the forest was birdsong. Trying to catch their breath, the band of misfits still managed to break away from the chase. The rumors really weren't lying. This exam is too difficult. You have to defeat the bear to pass the test. But unfortunately, Jurian can't hunt while these two are around. What to do? He could handle even 100 of these monsters alone. If this keeps up, we won't be taken, said a suddenly distressed Rishal. Everyone has their own circumstances, but the young man can't fail. This year is his last. This is why Rishal suggests that the comrades simply take the fang of this monster and rip it out. When his partners perplexedly asked him what he meant, the guy, correcting his glasses, reminded them that the test's assignment was to defeat the bear and take the tusk. But they're too weak. In that case, they have no choice but to just take the fang. When a delighted Jurian ran up to ask him if it was even possible, Rishal asked the boy to sit down next to him, saying there was one way. If you look closely, this bear's teeth are always sticking out. Putting his hand behind his sinew, the young man asked his companions to listen to him carefully, promising that if they did as he said, then the plan would definitely succeed. Rishal has been lucky this year. Monster Bear is the easiest enemy on this test. Taking out some strange pouch from behind his sinus and holding it out to Tien, the guy asked the young lady to apply this to her body. Looking at the thing in his hand in surprise, the girl asked what the thing was. In turn, the young man said it was deer blood. Bears are very sensitive to odors. He'll be so absorbed in this that he won't notice the tusk is missing. Realizing that he wanted to make a decoy out of her, a dumbfounded Tien fell into a stupor. Scratching the back of her head awkwardly, the girl explained that she wasn't very good at running. It's okay, we'll make it either way, Rishal shouted encouragingly, stroking the pouch in his hand. Monster Bear ignores attacks while he eats. I can definitely get the fang. At the same instant he said those ruthless words, someone grabbed his arm tightly. The young man turned around and noticed an angry Jurian standing behind him, holding his wrist. With a disdainful glance at Rishal, the boy wondered if he was seriously suggesting that Tien should die. Meanwhile, with a surprised look in Jurian's eyes, the green-haired guy can't understand what caused his partner to have such a negative reaction. Trying to pull his hand out of his grasp, he asked the boy what was wrong with that. Doesn't he want to go to the Magic Academy with his little sister? Waving him off, Rishal added that in a situation like this, there was no way out without a victim. Or maybe Jurian has another option on how to defeat the bear? The green-eyed guy explains that he has no other choice. He doesn't have a chance, so he's at rock bottom. Unlike the nobles, Rishal and Jurian aren't endowed with strong mana from birth. That's why the commoners must unite. It would be nice to go through together, sacrificing just one noblewoman. Ever since Tien was sent to this weak team, it was clear that she had been abandoned by everyone. And in that case, Rishal is sure that he and the boy can safely use this girl at their discretion. Tien also failed the test more than once. Meanwhile, her brother Ricky is so good that the girl's mother herself has already begun to doubt that the two are of the same blood. She's a disgrace to the Earl family, the only abandoned noblewoman. Whether she's abandoned or ignored, everyone has a moment when they shine, Urian suddenly shouted indignantly, stepping in front of the girl. Rishal can't just decide for others whether they are useful or not. Such words made the green-eyed youth very angry. He gritted his teeth and said that he had no other choice in this case. In the next second, he spat out all the blood from the pouch right at his teammates in a rage. "Then you will die with her!" Rishal shouted angrily. At the same instant, the bear smelled the deer's blood and turned on the boys. Without a second thought, the creature pounced on the terrified children, opening its fire-burning maw. Looking at that monster, Tien, with fear in her eyes, hopelessly screamed, unable to do anything. Meanwhile, a bewildered Jurian, drenched in blood, is thinking about what he can do to counter this terrible monster. It doesn't matter, though. Why bother thinking about it? He has great power, and he can use it easily. It's just a matter of timing. Looking at Jurian, Tien realized that he was too weak. Therefore, if one continued to stand like this and do nothing, the guys would definitely die. Angry, the girl realizes that she is the only one who can do something, and accordingly, she herself needs to destroy this monster. But all her confidence was immediately crushed by the bloodthirsty bear, which opened its maw. Looking into the face of her death, the noblewoman realized that there was nothing she could do against this invincible monster. But suddenly she remembered her mother's words. Even her own mother considers her daughter a disgrace to the family. Tien can't just accept it. Does she really want to just die here and now? No way! In the next second, the girl cast a powerful spell called Windshield. Even though Tien is very weak, she is still a noblewoman, and that can't be taken away from her. After that, the girl immediately created dozens of wind swords with her magic wand and launched them at the bear. Even such a powerful opponent would definitely not be able to resist her strongest spell. Looking at the wind swords flying at the monster, the noblewoman realized that everything had been decided and she had definitely won. But something happened that she didn't expect. The bear simply dispelled her magic, and the girl couldn't give it a scratch. As he watched the fight, Jurian, who had been standing behind him, noticed that the monster was quite strong. Not listening to what he says, Tien decides to save at least this boy. At the same moment, streams of chilled wind began to swirl around the boy. When Jurian wondered perplexedly what was going on, the girl warned him that the landing might be a little rough. The thing is, Tien knows how to launch things into the air, but hasn't yet learned how to land them safely. And yet, "It's better than death for you," she said, glancing sadly at the boy. In the next instant, she swung the magic tool, thus sending Jurian high into the sky. She would never forget what this commoner had done for her. He stood up for a noblewoman he hated in her most desperate moment. "Jurian, thank you for giving me this courage." Tien spoke softly, lowering her gaze helplessly. She hopes this guy can escape and survive this deadly ordeal. Immediately after she said those words out loud, the huge monster swung its paw, attempting to hit the noblewoman with all its might. But suddenly, the girl was in a different place, immediately losing consciousness. At the same moment, someone gently picked her up. "See? It's your time to shine too," Jurian said, taking Tien in his arms. The very next moment, the guy was behind the monster's back and gently placed the girl on the grass. The guy had to knock her out himself to allow himself to act more freely. Looking around, he wondered where the bespectacled man had gone. Did he run away because he was afraid of getting hit? Well, thanks to that, Jurian was able to save his partner. If Rishal had stayed nearby, the boy would have had no way to help her. Luckily now there's really no one to see him. And so first, the guy needs to get his fangs back. After these words, Jurian, without looking at his opponent with a single sweep of his hand, cut his body into small pieces. Fortunately, after that crushing blow, the fangs remained intact. Raising his fist, Jurian decides to have a little banter with that bespectacled jerk when he gets back. By the way, where did he run off to? As the angry commoners draw their weapons and stare at him wildly, the boy asks, perplexed, what they are going to do. Pointing the blade of his blade at them, Ricky from Ella's squad reminded them that swords and wands should only be embraced against monsters. One of the students with a black brooch looking madly at Ella asks the commoner to join them. He promises to help her pass the exam. Continuing to hold the sword in his hand, the gray-haired noble boy remarks that only the academy headmaster can decide such a thing. Therefore, he doesn't understand what this kid means. The blonde-haired kid explains that they will make all the nobles fail the test, and they will pass on. The worried guy with the green brooch standing next to him asked his comrade not to say anything. Ricky looked at them puzzled, but he realized that it was the first time he had ever seen commoners conspire against him. Then the blonde-haired kid shouted that it was all because of the nobles wanting them to fail. He then shouted furiously for Ella to come to them quickly. Looking at him indifferently, the gray-haired boy asked him if he really thought that the commoners could win if this girl was on their side. Laughing, the distraught boy with the black brooch explained that he would not be the one to defeat them. At this point, his partners demanded that he stop explaining the details to his opponent. "The monsters will do everything! We'll use them to kill the nobles!" shouted the blonde-haired kid, looking at the enemy madly. Unable to bear it, the comrades decided to get him out of here. Who even took this jerk? It was too late, though. The underdog had already managed to tell the whole plan. And unfortunately, Ricky wasn't so stupid that he couldn't guess after so many hints. The gray-haired guy noticed that more commoners were taking the test this year than before. That must be part of their plan, too. The princess standing behind adds that these boys most likely know that bear monsters can be attracted by the smell of blood. As a member of the ruling family, I wish to express my regrets, the girl suddenly said, placing her palm on her chest. She can't believe that the future defenders of humanity, students of a magical academy, are using monsters for such things. Afterward, she orders Ricky to capture these guys alive. We need to investigate who used the last part of the exam to put monsters on the others. At the same second, without slowing down in the slightest, the gray-haired guy immediately rushed towards the opponents, swinging his sword. In a moment of traveling several meters, Ricky had the blade of his blade grazed the blade of every commoner that stood in his way. As the princess had ordered, he didn't wound them badly so that they wouldn't die from bleeding. In simple terms, he simply struck each of them with the back of his sword. Realizing that if he doesn't do something now, things will end badly for him, Rishal decides to act. He immediately ordered his partners to scatter the deer's blood into the opponents. However, despite that blood flying directly at him, Ricky remained suspiciously calm. In the next instant, all the blood froze in the air and dissolved into space. The frightened Rishal, looking at the gray-haired guy in horror, can't understand what happened. Where the hell did the blood go? This was their last chance. Better give up, the princess muttered, dissolving the blood with her magic. Standing with her arm outstretched, she confidently said that the commoners' plan had failed and they had no other trump cards left up their sleeve. Meanwhile, Ella is surprised by the incredible power of royalty. The girl didn't even have to intervene. Looking hopelessly at the princess, Rishal shouted that this was the last year. He reminded his comrades that this was their last chance to enter the academy, and there would be no other. If they get caught by those damn nobles, it's all over. Don't give up, shouted the guy with glasses, pulling his sword out of its sheath. In the same second, he brought the blade to his wrist and let himself bleed. Even his partners were astonished at such a reckless act. Looking pityingly at the young man, the perplexed princess asks why go so far. After a while, a crowd of monster bears ran to the smell of blood. Ella looked at them in horror, not understanding where 4 opponents had come from. They're monster bears! Can the kids do anything to them? While a maddened Rishal is yelling that the nobles can't catch them so easily, a still calm Ricky is already starting to create a wind spell. With a single swing of his blade strengthened with wind magic, the gray-haired guy cut off the heads of all 4 monsters standing behind the commoners. Seeing this, Rishal looked hopelessly behind his back. This is the end. Is this really how the nobles fight? They're on a whole other level. There's no need to hurt yourself just because things didn't go according to plan. You're residents of this kingdom too, after all, Ricky said, putting the sword back in its place. Immediately afterward, the princess's squad tied up all the rioters. Walking up to the annoyed Rishal, the The gray-haired fellow remarked that his sister was on the same team with this young man. Smiling grimly, the laughing kid with glasses looked at him, telling him it was like that. He's very glad that Ricky and Ella are just both here. Your brother and sister are already dead! They are no match for you! A distraught Rishal yelled, glaring at them mockingly. Then he added that the bears had torn those two apart. On the other hand, one of them might have been lucky. At the same moment, the princess ordered Ricky to walk towards them. There must have been some traces left behind. Pulling out her sword, Ella, scared for her brother, also decided to go after her partner. But suddenly, the girl behind her ordered her to stay here. Shivering with fear, the red-haired girl stopped abruptly. Turning around, Ella irritably asked why she couldn't go to her little brother's rescue. Looking under her feet, the princess explained that she knew how the girl felt. Hearing about this happening to your family is just awful. However, you will only be in the way, the royal suddenly uttered. If it happened as Rishal said, the place could be covered in someone's blood. The princess reminded him that monsters are very sensitive to blood. And so when they smell it, they'll start gathering in one place. 10 or 20. It's hard to say how many. Ricky is a skilled enough swordsman to deal with everyone. But protecting Ella at the same time would be difficult even for him. The girl asks her partner to trust the guy and stick around until it's over. Clutching her sword in her hand with all her might, Ella can't believe that Jurian might already be dead. After a while, Ricky had already reached the place where his sister and Jurian were supposed to stay. Running up, the guy sees Tien lying on the grass covered in blood, holding a bear fang against her chest. Suddenly, the dazed, gray-haired guy notices someone strange in front of him. Braking sharply, Ricky stops in front of a stranger wearing a knight's helmet. Huh? That's not a bespectacled man? The strange man chagrined when he saw the boy. Looking at him silently, Ricky notices a black brooch on the stranger's chest. So they didn't catch all of them? There's one more. Then he remembered his sister lying bloody on the grass. Did that bastard really hurt her? How dare you! Ricky shouted desperately, pouncing on the helmeted opponent in the same second. When the gray-haired guy attacked him with his blade, the suspiciously calm, mysterious stranger immediately drew his sword, preparing to block the blow. At the same instant, the two blades made contact with each other with a loud clang. Looking at the commoner in surprise, Ricky can't understand how he managed to block his attack. What a quick reaction. Holding back his opponent's sword, the helmeted student asked him if it was too dangerous to attack so suddenly. You think you're going to get away unscathed after injuring my sister? Ricky asked him emotionlessly, not expecting an answer. What's wrong with this commoner in the first place? Not only is he incredibly technical, but he can also strengthen his sword with magic. While a surprised Ricky tries to find a gap in his defense, the stranger asks him to calm down for a second and listen to him. He realizes that the guy might have misunderstood the whole situation. But when the helmeted man said that he didn't want to harm Tien in any way, the gray-haired guy who looked at him indifferently, not wanting to listen to him, immediately used wind magic. This spell was more powerful than the student with the black brooch expected. In the end, not without difficulty, but he still managed to completely dodge the wind attack. It was really dangerous. That young man had almost broken his helmet. While the surprised stranger was looking at him, Ricky had already managed to run up to his sister and use his windshield. Without turning to look at his opponent, he began to list all the oddities of the situation: the suspicious helmet, his unconscious sister, and the commoner. What could be misunderstood here? Despite this, however, the mysterious student with the black brooch does not look like the attackers from earlier. To acknowledge the stranger's amazing abilities that allowed him to dodge his two attacks, the gray-haired guy decides to introduce himself. My name is Ricky. I serve the Wind Spirit V, eldest son of Viscount, he said proudly, turning to look at the boy in the helmet. Yeah, sure. Nice to meet you. With a cringe, the stranger replied, almost burning with embarrassment. After that, he too introduced himself, calling himself Yuri Sung-kun. Turning his head, Ricky asked Jura Sun-kun to answer one question, since he claimed that he really wasn't part of the attackers. Who did this to my sister? The boy angrily asked him, throwing him a frantic look. From the power of his embittered wind, the cold chilled the helmeted man to the very bones. That's when Jurian remembered what happened when he tried to save Tien. Continuing to stand still calmly, the student with the brooch explained that he had done so. Maybe I did it. Well, at least I had to knock her out, but... Hey, are you even listening? Jurasan-kun asked, noticing Rika's furious face. Pulling out his sword, the gray-haired guy, indifferent to his words, promised his opponent that this time he would definitely break his ugly helmet. Looking at him sadly, the student with the black brooch remarks that it looks like the misunderstanding won't be resolved so easily. Well, in that case, he has no choice. He still has to find the fangs to pass the test, and this guy's in his way. So we'll talk another time. Jurasan-kun muttered, snapping out of his seat at the same second in the direction of the enemy. Stepping back coolly, Ricky notes that this guy is pretty fast. The movement of a knight of intermediate level or higher, but he can easily anticipate it. Ricky's sword is many times faster. In the same instant, the blade of his blade was at Jurasan-kun's neck. Pressing down hard on the hilt of the sword, Ricky swept the blade across the full amplitude of its swing. Did you cut it? No! Looking in front of him, the gray-haired guy noticed that the enemy had disappeared somewhere. At the same moment, while he was trying to figure out what was going on, someone from behind hit him in the neck with a brush. Falling to the ground, Ricky immediately lost consciousness. When did that bastard get behind his back? Meanwhile, before he passed out, Jurian explained to the guy that what he had cut was his residual image and nothing more. The 29th entrance exam has been completed. There was an incident during which some of the entrants took advantage of the monster's features and attacked others. But the princess dealt with them and sent royal investigators to investigate. Magus cheerfully said that everyone did a good job. Chili agreed, noting that the level of students this year was very high. However, the red-haired man sitting across from her can't understand what Miss Chili is talking about. High level? What do you mean? This year is a mess. And it was the commoners who made it, right? The indignant woman immediately asked Mr. Jerry to refrain from such words. This academy doesn't look at status. With a mocking glance at her, the man objected. It's all just for show. The Royal Academy of Magic is a place where nobles can do their duty. Or maybe he should be reminded of the sage's words. An angry Chi Li asked that her father's words not be mentioned in the context of this school. Hitting his fist on the table, Magus demanded that it stop. He immediately asked the frightened boy standing next to him to continue his report. Holding his head, the guy tells me that 29 people have passed, and the results of the 29th entrance exam to the Magic Academy had already been given to everyone. Here's who made it into the top 10. Opening the top is the silent princess Sasaruchi. Right behind her comes her faithful friend from the Wind Spirit clan, Riki. Standing at the results booth, he searches the crowd for the mysterious Jurasan-kun. Bronze goes to Jade, the magical swordsman. His mom will be happy about that. Fourth and fifth place were shared by the younger sister, Sia, and the older sister, Mu, respectively. The two girls are confident that they could have won first place if they had worked together. But unfortunately, this was a test of individual ability. In sixth place is the commoner Ella. Her brother would definitely be proud of her. Next in line is the Home Secretary's son, Chris. He seems quite annoyed at the fact that he has been overtaken by some plebeian. In eighth place was the bloodthirsty Julian Rezo. Princess Saruchi's main fan favorite, Hina, is ranked 9th. Closing out the top 10 is the Bangsy Goliath. He didn't seem to like instructor Karyumpi. In 24th place stood the barely passed Tien from the Wind Spirit clan. The girl is very proud of her brother, who took second place among such a huge number of strong opponents. But where is Jurian, who saved her? At this time, a boy with a black brooch, lost in the crowd, looks at the list of those who have passed the exam with a smile and laughs quietly. Nervously looking at the booth, the hysterically laughing kid realized that things were really bad for him. Jurian, failure! Laughing nervously, Jurian realized that apparently even bringing the bear fang wasn't enough, due to the fact that he had performed too poorly in the sword and magic tests. Running up to her distraught brother, a worried Ella said that rumors had reached her that the boy was trapped. Scratching the back of his head, Jurian explained that he was fine, and apologized to his sister for making her worry. And by the way, Ella came in 6th place. She's amazing. Plus, they say there are some benefits to being in the top 10. Thanking her brother for the praise, the girl said that she felt that she was just lucky. So Ella hopes that luck will be on her side next year. Looking at his sister in surprise, the boy asked what she meant. Smiling sadly, Ella explained that she wasn't going to enter the academy now, and would try to do so in a year. After all, they originally wanted to get there with their brother. Suddenly, someone's gloating laughter sounded nearby. Great, then you'll be out of this academy, both of you! Chris shouted happily, after hearing the two of them talking. Not understanding what was going on, Jurian and his sister looked perplexed at the son of the interior minister. Noticing their stares, Chris stopped laughing and fell silent. But after that, he began to roar furiously with even more vigor than before. The only thing Jurian wanted at that moment was to beat the shit out of the bastard with his own fists. After hearing the results of the entrance exam, Chili slapped her palms on the table and jumped up from her seat and shouted that she didn't agree with the results. Puzzled by this reaction from the teacher, the head of the Magic Academy said that he thought it was expected. However, the blonde-haired girl clarified that it wasn't about the top 10 students. She couldn't accept Jurian's failure. Glancing at the report, the guy in the yellow vest narrated that Ella's younger brother from 6th place had brought in the lower jaw of a bear, but that he was unlikely to have extracted it himself. Agreeing with the boy, Ka Ryunpi remarked that this Jurian compared to his sister was not proficient with a sword. But despite that, Chili is sure that this kid has some other huge talent. Meanwhile, Chris didn't stop taunting Jurian and his sister. The minister's son was so amused by the failure of these commoners that he danced with happiness. That's when Jurian couldn't take it anymore. Now he's definitely going to go and punch that asshole in the face. But the guy was stopped by a man in a suit suddenly running in, saying he had an urgent announcement to make. In addition to the 29 students who passed the entrance exam, one more admitted student will be selected. And the last person to enter was Jurian with a magical profile. From such an unexpected decision of the commission, all the nobles were stunned. How could a commoner be chosen separately? Wasn't this the first Royal School of Magic? Ella looked happily at her brother and congratulated him on his admission. Jurian, in turn, could not believe that he had actually been accepted. What was going on? A few minutes earlier, Chili jumped off her seat and shouted that she couldn't understand how Jurian could fail. He has great potential. Not only does this guy have enough magical powers to blow up a magic device, but he was also able to instantly limit the power, averting disaster. He has filigree control over his abilities. If the Academy misses this boy, it will be a huge loss to the kingdom. Spreading his hands, Jerry remarked that when the monster bear appeared, this commoner would have died if Tien hadn't pushed him away. This kid had too little actual combat experience. However, Chili explained that this very experience is earned at school. In the girl's opinion, Jurian will be able to overtake both first and second place in the future. Looking at her colleague with disdain, the red-haired man wondered where she got such an unhealthy love for commoners. Did she really think a commoner deserved a place in this school? Enraged, Chili shouted that the only one who didn't deserve a place in the academy was Professor Jerry. To think of a teacher so clearly discriminating against a student, telling the two to stop, May just reminded them that the School of Magic was a haven for talented warriors. Status didn't matter. Plus, the head of the academy trusts Professor Chili. She's one of the few heroic magicians in this country. Seeing this girl asking for a student, it would be foolish of Magus to ignore his talent. The head of the Magical Academy will use his power to separately accept Jurian to study with a magical profile. But such an unusual solution naturally has a condition. In case a guy fails to show the results expected of him, he will be immediately expelled. Jurisan-kun. A voice suddenly came from behind. Standing behind Jurian, Ricky noticed that the boy was about the same height as the mystery man he had fought during the exam. Turning around, Jurian saw the same guy from the Wind Spirit clan. It was the kid who knocked him out in the exam. When it occurred to Jurian that Ricky might have guessed everything, he was petrified. Staring at this boy, Ricky tried to remember how he had passed the sword and magic tests. That's right. That's the same kid who couldn't even cut the target in half. Realizing that this boy was too weak for Yuri-san-kun, Ricky turned around and muttered that he didn't understand the commission's decision. When the son of the Wind Spirit clan left, a surprised Ella asked her brother what that was about. With a sigh of relief, Jurian replied that he had no idea. The next day, walking down the hallway with her younger brother, Ella explained that the top 10 students and the special enrollment student were in the advanced class together. This means that Jurian and his sister will be in the same class. This makes the girl very excited. Reaching the right office, the two opened the door and looked inside. Almost all the students of the advanced class were already seated in the luxurious auditorium. The first-place student, Princess Saruti, as well as Ricky, who came in second place in the top. Two sisters, Sia and Mu, also placed 4th and 5th respectively. Jade from the 3rd seat, Goliath from the 10th seat, and the Princess Fan Hina were also already seated in their seats. Surprised at how luxurious the classroom looked, Ella asked her brother where they would sit. Jurian himself hadn't felt this way since elementary school. I wonder how learning is done in this world. Since this is the age of sword and magic, things must be less advanced than in his past life. At the same moment, Raizo from seat 8 came up from behind, looking irritably at Ella standing in the aisle, and told the girl to scram. Seeing him off with a glance, Jurian immediately realized that this guy would be the local school bully. Not without them, though. Noticing a classmate entering the auditorium, Chris jumped up from his seat and called out to him. Looking at Raizo perplexed, the nobleman asked why the hell he had come just now. With an annoyed look back at him, the long-haired guy wondered what the big deal was. You're supposed to set an example for low-born disciples, and you also came later than a commoner? Chris yelled in rage. Yeah, so what, you bastard? The bully wailed even louder than him. Pushing back your chair, Chris reminded the unthinking man that actually he's one spot higher in the rankings than that long-haired twit. So from now on, the nobleman advised Raizo not to be late. Such arrogant speech infuriated the bully even more. What the fuck does this dude think being only one spot higher in the rankings means anything? Is this motherfucker sick of living? Walking up to Chris, Raizo gave him a creepy look on his face and explained that such a test could in no way judge his abilities. Realizing that the two were likely to start fighting now, Jurian motioned for his sister to sit away from them. Apparently, Goliath liked the fact that these morons got into a brawl the first time they met. In turn, Hina, who was sitting next to him, was just cringing at what was happening. Meanwhile, Rudeus Greyrath... Oh wait, that's the wrong manga. Meanwhile, Jade looked admiringly at Ella, who had entered the classroom. As she sat down with her brother, the red-haired girl remarked that it was the first time she had ever sat in such soft chairs. Walking up to her, a beaming Jade introduced himself to his classmate. With an awkward glance at the boy, Ella also said her name, to which the magical swordsman asked the girl to speak without formality. They would be in the same class after all. Jade is actually delighted that two commoners made it into the advanced class against all odds. It's probably the first time that's happened since the school was founded. The boy is honored to study with them. First and foremost, he wants to be friends with them and ignore status. Noticing his fake smile, Jurian was surprised at how much the asshole was trying to suck up to his sister. You're Jurian, Ella's younger brother, enrolled in the special in order, aren't you? That's cool, Jade muttered, noticing the boy. Smiling, Jurian thanked the magical swordsman, just an FYI to clarify that he was not his own brother. Clenching his fist, an angry Jade noted that Ella was excellent with a sword. She was an excellent example of a student and fully deserved to be in the advanced class. I can't wait to see what you're capable of since you managed to get into the advanced class. I hope you'll prove yourself, the magical swordsman said, trembling with anger. In response, Jurian only laughed nervously, not understanding what was going on here. The entire class was tense from the beginning. Well, studying at this academy was not going to be easy. Soon the introduction to the class was over and evening came. Walking along with his sister, Jurian took stock of the fact that the first day was nothing special. Normal classes don't start until tomorrow, so I wonder what's going to happen there. Jurian, we're at the School of Magic, Ella suddenly thoughtfully muttered. Let's enjoy it before the other kids from the orphanage get here. As soon as the girl uttered this, the gloating taunts of the nobles were heard from behind. Approaching the commoners, the two guys with blue brooches were surprised that these scum had gotten into the Magic Academy. I wonder what happened. Do they really study here? Remembering that there was no such thing in his time, one of the students remarked that the standards had been lowered a lot this year if there were commoners studying in the advanced class. Turning around, an excited Jurian saw two sophomores. Of course, how could there be no such scum? Most likely these dudes would be hazing right now. Jurian didn't seem to mind, though, because he had a problem with his head. As they approached the commoners, two students with blue brooches demanded an appropriate greeting. Pulling her little brother back, Ella stammered an awkward hello to the sophomores. Aha, now strip, ordered the bulky man, glaring at the two men with disdain. Not understanding what he meant, Ella asked again. How dare the commoners wear the same clothes as the nobles? This is unacceptable. If I say strip, then strip, the sophomore yelled in rage, grabbing Jurian by the vest. However, when the bulky man tried to lift the boy up, something didn't go according to plan. He couldn't even get that kid off the ground an inch. Why is this motherfucker so heavy? While the sophomore was trying to figure out what was even wrong with this kid, a satisfied Jurian just stared at him and didn't fight back. Noticing the sophomore's hazing, Jade ran up and called out to Sunbae Nim. Trying to catch his breath, the boy reminded the bulky man that the magical academy was not a place to discriminate on the basis of status. Nuna, that's funny, Jurian muttered contentedly, looking at his worried sister. At the same time, Jade asked Sunbae Nim again to let that boy go. The thug's actions are a disgrace to the honor of the School of Magic. Hearing this, the two sophomores looked at the magic swordsman with hatred. Maddened, the bulky man swung his fist around and slammed it into Ella's face. "Respect your elders!" Sunbae Nim yelled, lowering his gaze to the red-haired girl. Seeing the way the sophomore punched Ella, a shocked Jade was stunned. From such a powerful blow, the girl immediately lost consciousness and fell to the ground. Now it was no longer fun for Jurian. "How dare you, you stupid bull!" the boy said hatefully as he looked at the bully. This blue-haired woman's name is Hyo-1, and she's the president of the heroic class. Sitting at her desk, the head of the Magic Academy thanked her colleague for taking the advanced class. Sipping tea, Hyo-1 explained that she only did so because she had nothing to do. Laughing, May just remarked that the woman was as straightforward as ever. However, she needs to know that this year's class will be one of the most good reasons in the school's history. With an interested look at the head of the academy, Hyo-1 clarified if it was her sister and brother she was talking about. Despite being strongly opposed by the nobility, they entered in a special order and took a place in the advanced class. The heroic class president understands why the girl was accepted. She's a commoner, but the way she instinctively charges her sword with mana is truly amazing. If she was an aristocrat, a place in the academy would automatically be secured for her. Miss Ella is incredible, but the same cannot be said of her brother. Chi Li insisted that there was a hidden talent in him, but unlike his sister, he was unable to prove himself. Nevertheless, Magus still took this boy in a special order. It must have something to do with the very good reason the head just mentioned. "Hyo-1, do you think the school is as it should be?" Magus inquired. This place was supposed to nurture talent regardless of status, but it was actually the cornerstone for the children of aristocrats to enter the world. If this continues, it will inevitably lead to the fall of the kingdom. Continuing to sip tea, the blue-haired woman told me that she had only been taught to fight since childhood, and so she would take the head of the academy at his word. Hyo-1 will rely on Magus's judgment and the good reason he mentioned. Speaking of good reason, they're just now being offended right under the academy principal's windows. But when Magus, seeing this, decided to stop those bullies, Hyo-1 asked him to wait a bit. For now, it's best to just observe. She is very curious as to what this good reason is. Enraged, Sunbae Nim punched Ella's face with a tremendous force with his fist. When he saw the bulky man hit his classmate, a shocked Jade was stunned. Ella could not expect such a sudden attack, and therefore, from such a powerful blow, the girl immediately lost consciousness and fell to the ground. Now that's when Jurian stopped having fun. He can't hit that jerk or his heart might be torn apart. While the boy was wondering what he should do, Jade snapped out of his seat. Asking Jurian to take Ella to the infirmary, the magical swordsman stood in front of the bulky man. "I'm taking these bastards to administration," Jade muttered, preparing for battle. Still standing with his hand raised, Sunbae Nim interrogated the guy as to why he had just yelled. Did he forget that he was talking to sophomores? They're actually 15 years old. Okay, wait, what's the big deal? When did he manage to break free? It's not like I was relaxing, Sunbae Nim whispered shockedly, shifting his gaze to his hand. Meanwhile, Jurian was already sitting in front of his passed-out older sister. The boy noticed something when that bastard hit Ella. Before making the attack, Sunbae Nim filled his fist with mana. Is he out of his mind? How dare he stand in Jurian's way? He would have loved to give the bastard a good beating, but unfortunately he couldn't reveal his powers. While Jurian was sitting next to his sister, Jade rushed over to attack Sunbae Nim. Trying to overpower the magical swordsman, the bulky man began to panic. How is that even possible? That kid is much smaller, Sunbae Nima, but still incredibly strong. Realizing that he could not defeat this boy alone, the bulky man tisked unhappily. Trying to hold back Jade's onslaught, he shouted at Nigel to use magic, ignoring the prohibition against using it on school grounds for non-educational purposes. They have no other choice. After all, if they lose to this little kid now, they'll ruin the honor of all the elders. Jade, stand back! Jurian said suddenly. And while Jade, struggling, asked a classmate to get Ella to the nurse's station sooner rather than later, Jurian activated healing magic. I cured her, so don't worry. I'll take care of the rest, the boy explained, stopping the fight with those words. Everyone who saw what he had just done went into a stupor. Even the academy head along with the heroic class president were stunned by what had happened. After curing his older sister, Jurian lifted her off the ground and asked her to sit a little longer. Sure, the boy had healed Ella, but she'd better not overwork herself. Well, now the guy's going to show these bastards the first way he learned how to hide powers. However, turning around at the fighting students, Jurian noticed something strange. What's wrong with their faces? Where are they looking so dumbfounded? You took him in special order knowing that? Hyo-won inquired, not taking her gaze off this striking student. But as expected, even the head of the Magic Academy himself didn't know that this guy possessed such incredible strength. Even when a surprised Ella got to her feet, Jurian still couldn't understand why everyone was staring at him so strangely. "What are you doing? How did Ella get better?" Jade asked with terror in his eyes. "What do you mean? I cured her. What are you doing?" Jurian clarified, perplexed. "Welcome to the first episode of Common Sense. Let these two orphans, who, by the way, will be going to the School of Magic in 2 years, clarify for you what happened after all. Healing is used by mages to heal wounds. Depending on the wielder's ability, the process can take anywhere from 5 to 15 minutes. In general, even a priest needs a minimum of 5 minutes. So, dear students, let's not do silly things like complete instant healing. This concludes today's episode of Common Sense. And as one could understand, Jurian had no idea that even experienced priests couldn't instantly heal people. After realizing that this boy had an incredible gift, the two nobles were angry that a commoner had such power. Jade was furious that he couldn't show his cool side in front of Ella. The president of the heroic class appeared out of nowhere. Standing in front of the children, the blue-haired woman in the red cloak reminded them that fights between students were strictly forbidden. While Ella was trying to figure out where Hyo-won had come from, it came to Jurian's attention that the woman had been watching them the whole time. Standing in front of the students, the heroic class president looked at Jurian thoughtfully. Then, smiling, she made sure that there were a lot of interesting students this year. "Shoo! In honor of the opening ceremony, I'll pretend I didn't see anything," Hyo-won said as she chased those bullies away. Everyone apologized to the teacher and immediately ran away. But Sunbae Nim couldn't seem to accept the defeat. "I'm sure he'll try to take revenge on those kids again." When he and his sister entered the private room, Jurian cried out in admiration. "It's so beautiful here, and there's a bed too." Laughing merrily, the boy remarked that this dormitory was just great. After a few seconds, however, the boy guessed that he wasn't going to be able to distract his sister from what had happened recently with that idiotic laugh. Lowering her head, Ella said that she didn't realize her little brother was so talented. Total instant healing. She had never even heard of such a thing. Awkwardly averting his gaze, Jurian admitted that he hadn't realized it was something incredible. Now that everyone knows about her brother's incredible abilities, Ella is sure that the boy will definitely be accepted to some cool place after graduation. Somehow, Ella feels that their paths will soon part. Noticing how upset his older sister was, Jurian snickered as well. Realizing that he was indeed at fault, the boy lowered his gaze and turned away, unable to say anything to reassure Ella. But as it turned out, she didn't need to be reassured. Excitedly, the red-haired girl said that in that case she wouldn't fall behind. After all, her favorite brother is just around the corner, and Ella is also in the advanced class. So now they just have to support each other until the very end, the next day. When everyone walked into the auditorium, they saw their new classroom teacher. "Did you guys have a good rest yesterday? I'm the class teacher of the advanced class. My name is Hyo-won. Let's be friends." A blue-haired woman in a red cape introduced herself. Looking at her in surprise, Hina remembered that this Hyo-won was a hero. Laughing, the bang-headed Goliath sitting next to her reminded her classmate that this was an advanced class. Obviously, the teacher would be someone cool. Also surprised, Jurian told his sister that he hadn't realized that their class teacher had stopped the fight yesterday. Ella, in turn, replied that she had seen this woman before. Smiling, Hyo-won asked the students if they liked their private rooms. The beds there are softer than the other students. These exclusive rooms were specially equipped for the advanced class. In other words, regular students who couldn't get in here don't have those privileges. From this day forward, delicious food, new uniforms, great equipment, it's all at their disposal because they are an advanced class. If these kids can hang in there until the very end, everyone else at school will look at them with envy. But they should not relax because there is a screening system. These students got into the advanced class by taking the placement test. Well, if their grades drop, they'll be moved to a regular class. The number of students in the final year of the advanced class was 0. Jurian can't wait to see how many of them graduate from the advanced class. Well, here we go with the first advanced class of the year. And as soon as the teacher started writing something on the board, Jurian realized something. It seems like it's going to be a very good start. Because the advanced placement grade is absolute rather than graded, the number of students in the advanced placement class varies each year. Unlike regular students, the advanced class receives a tremendous amount of support. After graduation, they are guaranteed a successful career. However, if they fly out, they immediately move to the regular class, and the pride gained from getting into the advanced class disappears. For your information, the number of students in the final year of the advanced class was 0. After all, would our protagonist be able to graduate from the advanced class? Well, here comes the first class of the year. As soon as the teacher started writing something on the board, Jurian realized that the beginning was clearly going to be very good. Chris, in turn, didn't realize at first if the teacher was joking. Is she going to teach them math now? Raising his hand, the minister's son asked the teacher's permission to ask a question. Why do they need math in magic school? The kid wants to study magic specifically. Why do you need magic? Asked Hyo-won, looking at the student. Chris then explained that he wanted to become a great wizard like his class teacher and help the kingdom. Of course, Hyo-won liked that kind of answer. But disciples don't need mana or even magic to become stronger. They need knowledge of the world. If a magician has knowledge, he can easily surpass himself. To give an example, Hyo-won asked her students what she needed to do to make the fire bigger. The first to give an answer was Chris, saying that it would require the teacher to use more mana. Agreeing with this answer, the instructor defiantly increased the power of her fire. This is usually done with the application of more mana. But what if the mana runs out and there's no more to add? Hyo-won asked the girl with the bundle on her head to answer that question. To this, Hina replied that it was necessary for the other spellcasters to use supporting spells. However, this turned out to be incorrect. It is certainly one way. But the best way to increase fire without mana is in a different way altogether. The best way is to use the wind, Hyo-won explained as she combined the essences of fire and wind with her two hands. In the same second, a powerful fire tornado appeared in the center of the classroom. When fire combines with wind, the fire begins to grow rapidly. This is a common combustion reaction, of which Jurian has heard all too well. That is what knowledge is, and that is why students should not focus only on increasing their mana supply. You have to learn everything you can get your hands on. That's why Hyo-won decided to test the students' knowledge with a simple test to begin with. After handing out the assignment sheets, the teacher asked the children to get started. A few minutes later, when the testing time was over, Hyo-won checked the answers. To her surprise, 3 of the students had a perfect score of the highest possible score. While waiting for the test results, Chris couldn't handle his nerves. He didn't know how to solve 2 questions, so he gave 2 answers at random. As expected, one of the top 3 was Suruti. However, to no one's surprise, the princess did great. The next person to answer all the questions correctly was Raizo. Hearing this, a dumbfounded Chris couldn't believe that asshole Raizo had made all the mistakes. "Hey, what are you sweating so much for? Don't tell me you have mistakes," came a creepy voice behind the minister's son's back. Causing even more consternation, Raizo reminded Chris that he was an aristocrat with the advantage of admission. He's 7th on the list and so cool. The long-haired guy then explained that the rankings change once a month and he wasn't interested in seats, but he advised his classmate to start trying hard from tomorrow to avoid getting out of here. The last phrase finally killed Chris's confidence, plunging him into depression. Meanwhile, the teacher continued to announce the test results. The last one to make it at all was Jurian. Of course, all the classmates were surprised when they heard that this guy passed the test with a full score. A shocked Ella looked at her brother and asked how he did it. In response, Jurian only laughed gloatingly. In a past life, he was a Republican high school student in the Republic of Korea, suffering from private education. That example that the teacher wrote on the board just a little while ago, the guy can count in his head without any problems. It's elementary. If things continue like this, Jurian will be the best in this school. Laughing, the bang-headed Goliath remarked that this boy was very cool. "Jurian, I'm not losing to you," Jade muttered nervously, glaring at his opponent. That was the end of the simple tests. In honor of such an occasion, Hyo-won decided to give her students a small gift. Pulling out a small medal in front of her, the blue-haired woman multiplied it and used telekinesis to give the gifts to the boys. This is an advanced class badge. After giving them to the students, the class teacher asked them to attach these medals to their vests. With these things, kids will have access to everything at school. For example, they will be able to eat the best food exclusively prepared for the advanced class. Upon entering the dining room and seeing the real meat, Jurian and his sister turned into real hungry animals. Pouncing on a piece of beef, an excited Ella screamed that this divine meat just melted in her mouth. The advanced class is simply the best. Both Jurian and his sister now want to study here forever. Well, in that case, they have to work hard to get good grades and not get kicked out. Gathering in the forest with their teacher, the advanced class students prepared for their second lesson. After asking the kids if they liked the food, Hyo-won explained that today They were going to have a monster hunting lesson. Unlike the morning test, this class will affect the students' grades. In the worst-case scenario, they will be expelled, so the kids need to do their best. After hearing that this class would affect her grades, Ella decided to kill all the monsters by all means and get first place. After calming the red-haired girl down, Hyo-won reminded her that they were all still beginners. These kids are too young to hunt monsters on their own. For this class, the teacher has called the sophomores, also known as the Combined Monster Hunting class. For the record, teamwork will be taken into account for scoring. So it's best for the kids to get along with each other. Today, the advanced class will have to hunt monsters with their beautiful seniors, with Nigel and Sunbae Nim. Seeing these two, Jurian laughed nervously, realizing that he was finished. "Now, arrogant boys, it's nice to meet again," Nigel muttered as the teacher left. Since that blue-haired woman said that teamwork will be important in grading, the sophomores can just say that the freshmen didn't listen to them. In that case, the advanced class grades will get worse, right? Asking the kids not to be scared, Nigel said that he and his friend were not vindictive. But freshmen shouldn't forget that their elders can be either good or bad, depending on the actions of these youngsters. Looking at Jurian and Ella, Jade said that as much as they wanted to work with these guys, they would still have to listen to their elders. Though it's very unfair, Jade expects to stay in the advanced class at all costs. Clenching her fist, Ella said that she and her brother wouldn't back down either, except it's unlikely these sophomores will think highly of them, even if they listen to them. Look at them giggling evilly. After all he's been through, Jurian just can't let those two jerks ruin his grades. Suddenly, the boy had a brilliant idea. After apologizing to his esteemed elders, Jurian decided to make one suggestion to them. "How about we make a bet?" the boy suggested, glancing confidently at the sophomores. However, such an offer only made the elders angry. How dare a commoner offer a bet to the nobles? What could a newcomer even do? Pointing a finger at Jade and his sister, Jurian promised to show what they could do. "Do what you want!" Nigel shouted in fury. He then grabbed a gun barrel standing next to him. With a sharp wave of his hand, the guy threw this barrel at the freshman. Since Jurian wants to bet so badly, Nigel suggested they get swords and everything. There will be a practice fight. The sophomores will recognize the freshmen if they win. But kids need to keep in mind that the battle will be fought with real swords. So they better try not to get hurt, because the teachers won't be able to tell if they've been hit by a monster or a human. Horrified at such a suggestion, Jurian checked with his elders to see if they really wanted to fight with real swords. Laughing evilly, Nigel asked the kids not to be frightened. Their elders weren't so bad, and so they'd be careful. But, to all appearances, the newcomers were not particularly worried about it. On the contrary, they were even happy about the terms of the bet. Not only would they have a good time, but they would also stay in the advanced class. Seeing this reaction, the thug and his friend went into a stupor. With a hateful look at the newcomers, Nigel told his partner not to hold back. A few minutes had passed and the students had already prepared for battle, and so the fight began. Grabbing his two-handed sword, Sunbae Nim attacked Ella. Putting her blade out in front of her, the girl easily blocked the sophomore's blow. What the bulky man saw as he threw the punch struck him hard. The commoner filled the sword with mana. Then Ella was again unable to protect herself, let alone Juriana. It was because she couldn't stay calm and assess the situation sensibly. Today is different. The girl is fully assembled and now she's definitely not going to screw up. Realizing that he wouldn't be able to deal with his opponent alone, Sunbae Nim shouted for Nigel to rather use a protection spell on him. Holding out his wand in front of him, the blonde-haired guy cast a super armor on his partner. Immediately following that, he put a speed buff on his friend. Noticing the way the enemy mage was helping his partner, Jade snapped out of his seat and ran at Nigel. Extending his arm, the guy activated his ability. In one lightning-fast movement, he swept past Nigel. Looking at his wand, the enemy mage noticed that he was left unarmed. That's right. With this lunge, Jade chopped the magic tool into two pieces with his demonic sword. Dissolving the Shadow Blade, Jade explained that the cardinal rule of battle was to deal with the warlock first. As soon as it occurred to Sunbae Nim that he was essentially alone, an idea popped into his head. Since things have come to this point, he has no choice but to destroy the enemy spellcaster. Noticing the sophomore tearing towards Jurian, Ella yelled to her brother to be careful. Jurian, in turn, doing nothing, simply stood by. The enemy was closing in on him, but the guy stood still in cold blood. In an instant, the boy suddenly smiled. In the next second, Jurian was enveloped by a terrifying aura that made everyone shiver in fear. Feeling this incredible aura, Sunbae Nim froze in place in horror. Rushing towards her brother, Ella warned him of the danger. That horrible aura wasn't coming from Jurian at all, but from the monster that had crept up behind him. The bear swung its huge paw at the boy, preparing to tear its victim to pieces with its sharp claws. Running up to her younger brother, Ella pounced on him, covering the boy with herself. The monster ran its claws down the girl's back, leaving deep wounds on her body. Seeing this, scared for his classmate, Jade rushed to help. Extending his arm again, he summoned the demonic sword. This time, jumping high into the sky, the guy used a second blade form, the spiral. It only took one blow for the boy to make a huge hole in the bear's head. Jade used his demonic sword like a drill and thus finished off the terrifying monster. While the frightened Sunbae Nim was sitting on the ground, the body of a dead, huge bear fell beside him. The sophomore couldn't believe that this kid had finished off such a strong monster of what in one blow. And even though the bear had inflicted a very deep wound on that red-haired girl, she still somehow survived. Jurian once again, as if nothing had happened, used full instant healing. This is the advanced class. These kids are the best for a reason. Realizing this, Sunbae Nim irritably tisked. "You've passed, minnows. We won't report you," muttered the bulky man, rising to his feet. "But he'll tell about that dirty-blooded jerk Jurian, and his grades will be lowered, though he's unlikely to be expelled from the advanced class. No doubt this kid is great at healing, but it's only a support spell. He can't do anything on his own. If no one refused to be around when the monster attacked him, he would have just been torn apart." With an awkward chuckle, Jurian remarked that it made sense. Meanwhile, somewhere in a cabin in the woods, sitting with a mug of tea in her hand, Hyo Wan said that it wasn't supposed to be a unified class. After apologizing to his coworker, the green-clothed man remarked that everything had changed suddenly. The woman sitting next to him explained to Hyo Wan that sometimes this happens. It's also logical that the hero class president doesn't know about it. It's her first time here after all. Looking at the two seriously, Hyo Wan asked if such a thing was allowed. Laughing, the man in the green sweater asked the blue-haired woman to believe in the second year. Besides, teachers need rest too. However, such a response only made Hyo Wan even more suspicious. The theory lesson has suddenly been changed to a monster hunting lesson, and these two teachers are now trying to calm her down. Holding a glass in her hand, the blue-haired woman decided to clarify if her students were definitely not going to get hurt, since the sophomores were so cool. Nervously sipping her tea, one of the teachers asked her colleague not to worry about her students. Of course, nothing would happen to them. That's when Hyo Wan was convinced that the two obviously had bad intentions. What should she do with them now? How dare they harass Hyo Wan's first students? In that case, since those bastards had decided to fool her, the blue-haired woman thought it would be a good idea to praise them for their courage. As soon as she activated her terrifying aura, the two sophomore teachers froze in fear. After calming down, Hyo Wan continued drinking tea as if nothing had happened. "Okay, let's wait for now. After all, we're talking about the advanced class. They won't let themselves get hurt." "The family using the demon sword, are you Jade?" the guy inquired, seeing the freshman in front of him. He then asked Sunbae Nim if he had made sure they weren't followed by those mudbloods. Standing still, the bulky man confirmed that he had only brought a magic swordsman here. The whole time they'd been walking here, Jade had been wondering what was wrong. But when the boy saw him, he realized why he had been called here. Sitting on a rock with a creepy grin, the blonde guy asked to be allowed to give Jade one piece of advice. Now, sophomore year is called the Demon's Lair, because the top one among them is Laryl. There were 10 people in the advanced class on the day of last year's final year's commencement ceremony, until Laryl beat everyone else to a pulp. The 3 who obeyed stayed in the advanced class, and those who stood to the end ended up in the hospital. Therefore, there are now only 4 people in the second year of the advanced class, and there is a strict hierarchy among them. Tensely looking at Laryl, Jade tries to figure out why the entire sophomore class would be here. Speaking to the magical swordsman, the blonde guy said that he had heard something about his family not long ago. A family using a demonic sword. Jade has a lot of responsibility in his hands. If the boy can't graduate from the advanced class, his family will fall. It's true. Even before Jade entered this academy, even then, his family had already fallen into disrepair because of the magic tools. Thanks to these tools, people who can't even use a demon sword have started using mana swords like it's nothing. And it pissed Jade's father off incredibly badly. The magic tool is becoming more and more popular in the kingdom. A magic wand can easily create water, and a magic sword can release fire. If things continued like this, the demon sword family would fall very soon. But Jade proved to be the last hope. Jumping up from his chair, the father of the family grabbed his son by the shoulders and yelled that he was obligated to graduate from the advanced class no matter what it cost him. The demon sword family has to prove that it's still alive and well. If Jade can't finish the advanced class, then his mother, brother, sister, and father will simply die. Knowing this, Laryl promised to let the kid finish the advanced class. Surprised, Jade asked the sophomore what he meant. The blonde then explained that this class was now being watched by people of such heights that it was hard to even imagine their power. Just recently, Laryl had received an assignment from them. As a reward for completing it, they promised that no one else would drop out of the advanced class. For people like them, fabricating the end of some students' advanced class is a common thing. Unless Jade wants to disappoint his family, in which case now he'll have to go to those commoners and do as Laryl tells him. I mean, it's a lot easier than fighting for a spot in an advanced class. Laryl convinces Jade that he's only helping him because the guy's family is going through a rough patch. And now he has a chance to be a decent son. When their classmate returned, a concerned Ella asked if he was okay. The boy had taken so long to return that they were beginning to worry about him. As they got closer, Jurian asked where the elders had gone. Did they go to tell the teachers that the newcomers were not good at teamwork? While saying this, Jurian noticed something strange in his classmate's behavior. Materializing the demon sword, Jade brought the weapon above his head, preparing to attack Ella. In the next couple seconds, the guy made several swings of his shadow blade. Standing in front of his Ella, her younger brother began to watch as a multitude of demonic swords stabbed into the ground. This is a bad joke, don't you think? Jurian prompted, trying to analyze the situation. Ignoring his classmate's words, Jade turned around and advised him to be more careful. There's a lot of tension between these swords. If you touch them, you can't treat them with a simple cure. Smiling, Jurian noticed that this guy was quite capable since he was able to do such a thing with the power of a demonic sword. Turning back to his classmates, Jade apologized to them and advised them to just sit quietly in his trap. The thing is, the elder told the magic swordsman that he could monopolize all the points. Asking his friends to understand him, Jade explained that he was obligated to stay in the advanced class. Besides, it's okay for commoners to drop out, right? After apologizing to them once more, the magical swordsman promised to let the boys out when the lesson was over. A few minutes later, somewhere in the woods, fist bumps were heard. Beating Jade's face to a bloody pulp, Laryl reminded the kid that he had explicitly ordered these commoners' limbs to be cut off. Is this guy trying to disobey the people upstairs? Sitting on his knees in front of Laryl, a battered Jade realized that this was the end. Find your brother and sister and cut off their limbs, the blonde ordered, sitting on a rock in front of the freshman. After that, he explained that it seemed that the people at the top refused to accept the fact that commoners were studying at the School of Magic. Killing them is the main objective. Just for the record, other teachers can't get in here. It seems that the people at the top have gathered the teachers for this operation in one place, thus isolating them from the students. In other words, the assignment needs to be completed today only. Can't disappoint the people at the top. Besides, Jade has to save his fallen family, doesn't he? This is his chance to be a good son. But the kid couldn't do it. He couldn't kill his classmates. Hey, I don't get you, Jade. Don't you have an advanced class to graduate? Laryl asked, looking down at the battered boy. And by the way, the blonde wondered why Jade was doing so much for those poor commoners, protecting them from the sophomores and now disobeying orders from the people at the top. They're not poor commoners, it's Ella and Jurian, the magical swordsman muttered in rage, looking at Laryl with hatred. Perplexed, the blonde remembered that this guy had only been enrolled 2 days ago. Was that amount of time enough time to get so close? Slamming his fist on the ground, Jade replied that he wasn't saying that because they were close. Ella is talented with a sword and deserves to be in the advanced class, and Jurian is weak and lacks skill in magic. That said, he's smart and will definitely make a fine adult who will lead the kingdom to prosperity. And this boy also has an admirable ability to heal. He will be loved by many in the future and will cure many in the kingdom. In Jade's opinion, they both have a future. They will benefit more than any aristocrat discriminating against them just because of status. A benefit? Yeah, maybe. Laryl agreed abruptly. But Jade's family will be doomed to despair. To disobey high-ranking aristocrats is a crime, and it will lead his family to an even sooner decline. Naive, innocent brother and sister who know absolutely nothing about the world yet. Sade and Hazel were overjoyed when they found out that their older brother made it into the advanced class from 3rd place. It's something Jade has been going to for a long time for his family. The only thing his little brother and sister wanted was for their father to start smiling again. Getting his older brother into an advanced class could mean their family would be happy again. Jade realized it was going to be difficult, but as he hugged his brother and sister, he asked them to have faith in him. The boy promised that he would definitely graduate from the advanced class. Sade, Hazel, father. Holding out a hand to the boy, Laryl explained that it wasn't too late to save them. What's wrong with prioritizing your family over the future of the kingdom? What did Jade's brother and sister do wrong? No matter how much the guy resists, these commoners will still die today. The teachers won't save them. So, since it's going to happen anyway, why doesn't Jade get his act together and kill them himself to save his family? Asking the boy to take his hand, Laryl said he wasn't mad, then suggested he continue living as a successful aristocrat. However, slapping the blonde's palm, Jade declined the offer. Get lost! There's no way I'm doing that! The boy shouted in anger. My friends and family, I will protect them all. Hearing those words, Laryl looked at the freshman with disdain. As soon as Jade got to his feet, the blonde promised him that he would regret the choice he had made. Tonight, Jade will battle the sophomores to protect Jurian and Ella. And as much as the guy hates to admit it, his opponent is strong. But the boy has no choice but to fight. He can't let them do that. If Jade loses, Ella and Jurian are in trouble. 10 times. I'll stab you 10 times and then I'll kill those commoners. Laryl spoke coldly, delivering some kind of dagger. Seeing that short dagger, Jade was surprised that the enemy was going to fight him with it. How is he going to defeat a demonic ball opponent with such a weapon? But the fight was over before it could begin. As Jade prepared himself, he felt his body stiffen. Laryl had already managed to run up to the guy and plunge the dagger into his stomach. Blood spurted from Jade's mouth at the same second. Without removing the knife from his abdomen, the blonde told him that he had used long swords before too. But if you use a short dagger, you can look at the victim up close. After throwing the boy away from you, Laryl said there were 9 strikes left. Scratching the back of his head, one of the sophomores in the advanced class remarked that this ability to constrain movement was incredible. No matter how many times he saw it, it was still creepy. The partner standing next to him remembered that they had disobeyed Laryl at first as well, but in the end, they had no choice. This guy doesn't fight, he beats, and he does it in the most mocking way possible. After immobilizing his victim, he does a 10-second countdown to savor the moment and watch for a reaction. But there is another reason for this, which he usually doesn't tell anyone about. Plus, often most people manage to free themselves from its paralysis in that amount of time. Just when he felt he could move again, Jade materialized the demon sword and activated the 4th form, the whip. After counting to 1, the surprised Laryl easily repelled his opponent's attack. No doubt it surprised him that this guy continued to fight after the first missed punch. But it will have no effect on the outcome of the battle. Once behind Jade's back, the blonde man plunged the dagger into his shoulder. Groaning in pain, the freshman was numb again. Smiling contentedly, Laryl noticed that this boy had a great expression on his face. Stepping back a little, the blonde began counting down the next 10 seconds. This time it took Jade a little longer to come to his senses. At the time, when the countdown was almost over, the guy sat down on his knees and unleashed several spears obtained from activating the 3rd form of the demonic sword at the enemy. However, not a single spear could reach the target. After clapping such a great performance, one of the sophomores marveled that this kid could create so many copies. This year's advanced class is really impressive. Unfortunately, no matter how talented they are, they still can't surpass Laryl. After piercing Jade's palm, the blonde man immediately pulled out his dagger. Looking disdainfully at his victim, Laryl began counting down the 10 seconds. Meanwhile, somewhere in the woods, still trapped, Ella noted that what Jade had said about the points sounded a little odd. Agreeing with her sister, Jurian explained that any way you looked at it, it was an obvious lie. Then, the worried girl asked if Jade was going to be all right. It seemed the elders were threatening him again. Folding his arms, Jurian explained that if it was just those 2 idiots, their classmate would be fine. But for some reason, the boy has a bad feeling. After receiving his 10th stabbing, the scarred Jade fell to his knees. Unconscious from profuse blood loss, the boy collapsed to the ground. Watching this gruesome sight, Sunbae Nim froze in place with fear. If you're going to chicken out like that, you and your buddy get the hell out of here. We're here to kill! Laryl's eerie voice came from behind me. Shuddering in horror, Sunbae Nim apologized to his boss. Walking up to the injured boy, Laryl asked if he was alive. Holding the dagger in his hand, the blonde man noted that Jade's attempts to stop him had been futile after all. He would go and kill his brother and sister now. This boy's actions were senseless, and in the end, he only brought his family downfall. Sitting down next to the injured boy, Laryl asked if he regretted his choice. Why was he in such a state now? Why did his family have to suffer? Why couldn't he pull himself together? Saying that he could still save his family, Laryl once again suggested that Jade kill these commoners together. The duration of the restraint is 5 seconds. Ability recharge is 10 seconds. Hearing this from the still conscious Jade, an angry Laryl asked the boy if he thought it would make any difference if he knew such details. Leaning over to the boy, the blonde pierced his hand with the dagger once more. Feeling the incredible pain, Jade screamed exhaustedly. With a perplexed look at the boy, Laryl asked what he was thinking. Why won't he just comply? Jade should just graduate from the advanced class, right? Will he really let his family fall? Why does he do so much for these commoners? Grinning, Jade looked at the blonde man with a smile. You ask why I don't obey you? Are you asking why I behave like this with some commoners? You don't have any real friends, do you? Jade muttered, leaning his trembling hands on the ground. Looking into the blonde's face, the guy said with a chuckle that it was hard for him to even put into words how pathetic Laryl was. Such words incredibly infuriated Laryl. The blonde man gripped the dagger tightly and was ready to plunge it into Jade's back. Suddenly, the guy was stopped by something. Feeling something strange, he shifted his gaze to a student standing nearby. In the same second, a bloody dagger flew out of his hands. Looking up, Jade couldn't immediately realize what had even happened. Hey, you wanted to monopolize the points there? Came a voice familiar to the guy. Once next to Jade, Jurian healed him and asked him to never think of such a thing again. Instantly feeling relieved, the magical swordsman looked at his classmate in surprise. After seeing the way this kid used full instant healing, the two second-year students realized that those rumors were indeed true. And while Laryl tried to catch up on what was even going on, Jurian turned to the older bastards. The boys savvy that they wouldn't get away with it, and especially not that sinister blonde guy. With a mocking smile, Jurian advised the leader of this gang to get ready. With those words, the boy finally pissed Laryl off. The blonde man immediately materialized a short dagger in his hand. Laughing madly, Laryl was glad that the idiot had crawled here himself. He's going to kill this little asshole now, and he certainly won't hesitate like Jade. Well, now we'll see who really kills who. Apparently, however, Laryl had completely forgotten that this wasn't going to be a one-on-one battle. Using the second form of the demonic sword, the spiral, Jade attempted to attack the enemy. Dodging the attack, the blonde was surprised that this guy had time to recover his energy so quickly. So that's how this complete instant healing works. Jumping back, Jade asked Jurian why he had come here. I mean, he's so smart, so he must know it's dangerous here. As he approached his classmate, Jurian noticed that he was seriously injured. Initially, the boy thought he had succeeded in curing his friend. But he seems to have missed something. Jade looked back at his buddy and said he was fine. Rejoicing, Jurian told her that Ella was safe now. He took his sister to the princess team, after which he immediately ran here. Upon learning that Ella was okay, Jade exhaled a sigh of relief. What are you two whispering about? I'm getting lonely. An enraged Laryl muttered, looking at the two men grimly. Hearing this, Jurian tried his best to hold back his laughter at the fact that this jerk had just said he was lonely. Jade, however, was no joke at all. The blonde man's aura was full of killing intent. Looking intently at Laryl, the magical swordsman asked his classmate to prepare to run away. This bastard is much more dangerous than expected. Getting frustrated, Jurian reminded him that he'd actually just gotten here. Who said I'd let you go? The blonde man muttered, giving the boy a creepy look. In the same second, he activated the immobilizing ability. When he felt it, Jade immediately tried to guess who the first victim would be. Which of the two would he immobilize? Snapping out of his seat, a distraught Laryl, holding a dagger in his hand, pounced on the boys. Realizing he had no time to dodge at all, Jade activated the demon sword. Using his 8th form shield, the guy blocked the enemy's attack. But even though the magic swordsman managed to prevent the enemy from attacking, Laryl still managed to immobilize him. It turns out that a dagger doesn't have to touch a person to immobilize them. And now, because Jade has lost his fighting ability, Jurian is forced to protect him. Laryl looked out from behind the shield and wondered if Jade had anticipated this. He had created a shield to protect himself before he was immobilized. But getting closer, the blonde still stuck the knife in the guy's stomach. Hey, you nasty asshole! Came suddenly from Jurian. If you catch my eye again, I'll kill you before you even see me. Feeling this terrifying aura, Laryl froze in place. He couldn't understand why he was scared. Running up to the wounded Jade, Jurian activated the healing. Rising from the ground, the magical swordsman said that he had no idea what the blonde man was up to. But now they had a chance to finish him off. However, all this time, Laryl wasn't fighting at full strength. Saying he'd had enough, the blonde guy gave his subordinates 10 minutes to kill all the little jerks. Hearing the order from their superior, the rest of the sophomores laughed evilly. This is exactly what they've been waiting for. That's when Jade remembered that Laryl hadn't been alone all this time. The guy has no idea if he would have been able to escape from this gang leader alone. But now the entire sophomore advanced class will be fighting against him. Not only would he not be able to fight against them, but even running away from here was now impossible. What the hell do you do in a situation like this? Catching himself in these thoughts, Jade realized that now was not the time to be thinking about nonsense. If you just stand there, nothing will change. In that case, the guy needs to think about how to get out of here. Think, goddammit, think! That's enough, Jade. Suddenly came the voice of a calm Jurian. Approaching his classmate, the boy made a deft hand motion. In the next second, Jade just passed out. Catching the passed out guy, a concerned Jurian asked if he was okay. Seeing this ridiculous scene, one of Laryl's subordinates laughed that this kid fainted from fear. With a glance at Jade, Jurian asked for the rest to be left to him. The magical swordsman had already done a lot, and so now he could have a good night's sleep. Stabbing his sword into the ground, Ricky noticed that Jurian was already quite late. Didn't he want to pick up his teammate and come right back? A concerned Ella agreed with her classmate, saying she thought it was strange too. Jurian said he'd be back very soon, but he's been gone for quite a while. Something must have happened. Nodding, Saruti offered to look for the boy, adding that they couldn't just sit around and wait. Meanwhile, Laryl and his group run through the woods trying to find Jurian and Jade. They can't leave any witnesses or the whole operation could go down the drain. And how did a brat like him even manage to escape from advanced class students while holding someone on his back? The only thing on Laryl's mind right now is that he has an obligation to find and kill this kid. Suddenly, noticing a strange man in the path, the blonde man stopped abruptly and asked who he was. "Put in behind your boss." One of the sophomores ordered a stranger to get out of the way quickly because they had an assignment from the authorities. "Wow, it's been a while since I've practiced," the man in the helmet said, ignoring the chatter of the academy students. Turning around on them, the stranger decided to take the opportunity to stretch out a bit. And when he said he hoped these dudes didn't die too quickly, a pissed-off Laryl yelled at the man in the helmet who he even was. "I am Yuri, ahem, a brilliant swordsman," replied the stranger, almost saying his real name. Without letting the opponent realize what was happening, the three from the advanced class pounced on him. Laryl was fully confident that his guys would kill this helmeted man. After all, besides the fact that he had already used immobilization, these three were incredibly strong. Zinkong is the one who fought the hardest against Laryl. He is a true symbol of strength, capable of shattering stone with his bare hands. Alo surrendered first. Strange little brat who likes to kill others. Kelly is the weakest of the three, but he's a bloodhound who will complete any task, no matter what it costs him. They're all fine guys who fit Laryl's mold as henchmen. This weird asshole will die a slow and painful death as they rip his limbs off one by one. All that dude in the helmet can do is show off. Just as the blonde thought about it, something rumbled into the trees behind him. Turning around, Laryl saw something he clearly wasn't expecting. All three of his subordinates were sealed into the trunks of huge trees. Looking at them, the blonde couldn't figure out for a while longer what the assholes of these morons had forgotten here. Holding up his sword, the helmeted man explained to Laryl that immobilization didn't work on him. "These pathetic tricks won't work anymore." Hearing the way the asshole called his best move made the blonde go wild. Noticing the strange expression on his opponent's face, the helmeted stranger asked him to listen more carefully. And when Laryl tried to attack the stranger with his dagger, the knight simply grabbed the knife blade with 2 fingers. "I told you it wouldn't work. And by the way, is that by any chance the only thing you're good at?" the genius swordsman inquired mockingly. Snatching his dagger from his opponent's hand, the blonde began to deliver blow after blow. Noticing that the enemy wasn't even attacking him for some reason, a furious Laryl asked how he was going to win without even swinging his blade. Sensing that the question made sense, the stranger in the helmet hesitated. Immediately afterward, he grabbed the guy's dagger and broke off a piece of the blade. "That's it. The matter is settled. It wasn't that hard to win without even swinging a blade." Looking at the broken-off blade of the knife, the genius swordsman said he was a bit disappointed with the best among the second-year students. You can't even call it a warm-up. Realizing he had no other choice, the blonde decided to use his last trump card. It had been a full 4 years since the last time Laryl had held a long sword. Seeing the way the guy rushed towards him with sword in hand, the helmeted man asked his enemy not to disappoint him again. Approaching the stranger, the arrogantly smiling blonde activated his ability. With a perplexed look at him, the helmeted man reminded him that immobilization didn't work on him. In the next second, Laryl was behind the genius swordsman's back. Standing with blade in hand, he said that immobilization was not the only skill he possessed. Laryl is ranked first among second-year students, and this title was given for a reason, all because he's so fast that he's not conspicuous. A year ago, an incident involving an assault on an advanced class. The only reason the School of Magic couldn't fully hold Laryl accountable for his crime was the verdict of the Royal School of Magic's committee. Despite his character flaws, his abilities could not be ignored because the Academy is always short on talent. He possesses the skills the kingdom needs. Placing his sword on his shoulder, the blonde asked his opponent if he really thought he could move at his speed. After all, speed equals power. What's the point of having a powerful punching power if you just can't hit the enemy? Then, noticing the blood on the genius swordsman's shoulder, Laryl noticed that his opponent had really tough skin. In fact, the guy was planning to chop off his left one, so he was lucky to get away with only a cut. "Oh, you mean this?" the helmeted man said, puzzled, looking over his shoulder. "It's not my blood." Hearing this, Laryl asked the jerk what he meant. Then, as he lowered his gaze, he saw a huge, deep bleeding cut on his chest. Such a horrible sight made the blonde man scream in fear. As the exhausted lad fell to his knees, the genius swordsman walked over to him, sighing heavily and frustrated that he never got the warm-up he needed. Trying to stop the blood, a dumbfounded Laryl screamed in panic that he was a valuable asset to the kingdom. Attacking him is an act of aggression against the kingdom. However, the man in the helmet was quite happy with this arrangement. Besides, considering what that blonde man was doing to Jurian's friend, just letting him live is definitely not something the boy is going to do. Laryl bullied Jade so badly that he almost died. Remembering this, Jurian turned to Laryl. "Hey, I won't let you get off with a simple beating," said the magnificent swordsman. "By the way, how do you feel about sticking your head in a tree?" "Okay, I don't really have time to deal with you, so goodbye." At the same moment, Ricky felt an unimaginably powerful aura coming from somewhere deep within the forest. Having also sensed this terrifying aura, the princess asked her partners what it could be. The gray-haired guy immediately realized who this aura belonged to. It was undoubtedly Jurisan-kun. Hearing that name, a surprised Saruchi clarified to her friend whether he was talking about the culprit of the incident in the entrance exam. Without answering her, Ricky activated wind acceleration and headed towards the mana source. The princess turned to Ella and asked her to keep up. Meanwhile, all the way down to the hair and the guy holding the sword in his hand was already approaching the scene. Finding himself quite close to the source of this terrifying aura, Ricky saw an unusual scene. The best among the second-year students was lying on the ground in blood, but it seems he's still alive. Although, if he wasn't taken to the infirmary soon, there was a risk that this guy would die. Holding a sword in his hand, a helmeted man stood next to the student's body. Obviously, he was the one who had wounded the boy so badly. Stopping, Ricky asked Yurisan-kun what the hell was going on. Noticing the gray-haired fellow, the helmeted man allowed him to call himself simply Juris. Ricky himself was surprised that even Laryl, the best among the second-year students, couldn't handle Yurisan-kun. Hearing what that kid called him, the irritated man in the helmet realized that this dude would call him that name on purpose now. Tensely glancing at the stranger with the sword, Viscount's eldest son asked if even with such great strength, Juris was still going to kill students. And when the helmeted knight clarified that he hadn't killed anyone, Ricky, clutching his blade in his hand, realized that this man wasn't going to answer him honestly. Anyway, that's what it meant. Activating wind magic, the Viscount's eldest son pointed his sword blade at his opponent and promised that he would have to speak soon. Calmly looking at the gray-haired guy, Juris decided to check with his opponent to see if he was stronger than Laryl. However, Ricky only suggested that his foe think again if he thought he could win again. In this fight, the guy uses the full power of Wi, the wind spirit, against Jurisan-kun. Such words surprised Jurian greatly. What spirits are we talking about? That's when the boy remembered how the goddess Hersha had suggested he become a warrior, a demon, a dragon, or even a king. He hadn't thought about it before, but now he realized that there were other intelligent species besides humans in this world. At this time, Ricky swung his sword and summoned the mighty wind spirit Vi. As soon as the gray-haired guy asked the wind spirit to grant him its power, a cold wind enveloped his body and blade. Impressed by such a sight, Jurian decided to get himself one of these amazing buffs in the future as well. Ricky interrupted his musings, determinedly rushing to the attack. Activating the Thousand Wind Sword, the eldest son of Viscount began running around the enemy and launching sharp wind blades at them. In turn, Jurisan-kun was in no particular hurry to counterattack the enemy in any way. Looking at the blades flying at him, the helmeted man noticed that it was definitely getting cooler. In the same second, the swords reached their target, followed by a powerful wind blast. However, that explosion didn't come from the blades crashing to the ground, but from the fact that Yurisan-kun had completely repelled Rika's attack with just one swing of her weapon. With a creepy look at his opponent, the helmeted man suggested he could think of something better to do. But this situation was only to the advantage of the Viscount's eldest son. Noticing that his enemy had let his guard down, Ricky realized that this was his chance. Activating his strongest technique, the gray-haired guy decided to finish off this man in armor with just one blow. Looking at the way the boy was preparing to use his trump card, Jurisan-kun remarked that it looked pretty cool. But let me give you a surprise riddle just for you. I seem to be here, but you have your backside open. So where am I really? Ignoring the words of the man in the helmet, Ricky was ready to rush to meet his opponent and cut him in half with a single lunge. But soon enough, Yurisan-kun gave the gray-haired boy the expected answer. That's right. What the boy was looking at was only a residual image. Just like last time, in the entrance exam, Juris used the same cheap move and got behind his back and knocked Ricky out with a hand punch to the neck. In any case, even though the genius swordsman handled this guy pretty easily, at least this time his opponent was much better than Laryl. A joint predator hunting class for the freshman advanced class was cancelled. It was because Yuri Song-kun was the prime suspect in the entrance exam incident. The one who used beasts to attack the nobles appeared again and attacked the students. Having finally returned from the forest, a blue-haired woman in a red cloak swung open the doors of the principal's office. Seeing the heroic class president, Magus was excited to see them. Looking at him seriously, Hyo-won asked if the head of the Magic Academy had been informed of what had happened. Nodding, the man said that he had already heard that this incident happened when Hyo-won was called in by the instructors. Heading towards the principal's desk, the blue-haired woman added that these people were keeping her from going back to class. However, Magus pointed out that Hyo-won wasn't the type to be kept locked up. Agreeing with him, the heroic class president explained that she didn't actually fight back. She didn't expect her students to end up getting hurt. And since it did happen, Hyo-won suspects that the incident was orchestrated. The culprit is someone of high rank who has direct influence over the teachers. After listening to her version of the story, Magus realized that the woman had literally read his mind. He too believes that the true mastermind is a high-ranking aristocrat, but the heroic class president expected the principal to respond that way. Looking at him suspiciously, Hyo-won unleashed her terrifying aura outward, instilling fear even within the walls of the Magic Academy. Right now, this woman is praying for only one thing. She hoped that the head of the Magic Academy was not involved in this incident. But given his status and influence, it was likely that he was the organizer. Looking calmly at Hyo-won, Magus asked her to calm down. She's not the only one who feels offended by this. The principal is also very outraged by the fact that the students were seriously injured, and that's why Magus can swear he's not involved in anything. But he suspects that the teachers who kept Hyo-won locked up were cooperating with the organizers of the incident. So currently, the head of the Magic Academy is in the process of being thoroughly interrogated. And when the man promised to reveal the truth about the incident as soon as possible, the blue-haired woman asked him to look into the advanced sophomore class as well. They were the ones who had attacked her students. They are currently under the care of doctors due to the injuries caused by Yuri Song-kun. Hyo-won will launch her own investigation as soon as their health stabilizes. Speaking of Jurisan-kun, could he be an imperial spy? Unfortunately, the head of the Magic Academy hasn't confirmed anything about it yet. In any case, his identity should be revealed as soon as possible. This mysterious man is a threat and may even be hiding in the school, waiting for another chance to strike. At the same time, while the principal and the class teacher of the advanced class are trying to figure out who Jurisan-kun is, the one they are looking for is sitting in the canteen enjoying some delicious meat. Sitting next to his sister, Jurian shouted how divine it was. Ella, in turn, offered her brother a taste of the pudding. Now, Jurian is completely calm. He doesn't feel like they'll have to worry about being kicked out of the advanced class. It's unlikely that those second-year bastards would decide to teach the freshmen another dangerous lesson after many of them got hurt. Watching Ella and her younger brother, Chris noticed that they ate like typical poor people. Raizo, sitting next to him, advised his classmate not to get cocky. He actually speaks with food in his mouth, which is unacceptable for a person of noble lineage. What? You want to settle this one-on-one? Chris said, looking at the long-haired boy. Of course, I already made an appointment for you at the hospital, Raizo replied, casting a creepy look at his classmate. With a finger pointing at the two sisters, the bangs-haired Goliath told Hina that the two were said to have been attacked as well. But they looked fine, and seemed to be fully recovered. Withdrawing her gaze, Move said quietly that she would like to have some more fun. Accidentally hearing those words, Sia almost choked on her meat. Looking at her older sister in surprise, the black-haired girl asked what she had just said. As Jade entered the dining room, he saw Ella and Jurian sitting at the same table. When he called out to them, the boy was glad they were both all right. Chewing the meat, Jurian asked his classmate if he felt better. Confirming this, Jade explained that even though he had passed out, his body was surprisingly okay. "Jade, I heard you sacrificed yourself to protect us," Ella said, running up to the boy, embarrassing him greatly. Asking the guy not to go anywhere alone from now on, the red-haired girl suggested that they stick together from now on. And when Ella reminded the magical swordsman that they were actually good friends, Jade was incredibly relieved and agreed to stick together. Then, dining behind his back, Jurian told a classmate that he valued Ella by rank. First place, of course, is her little brother. Second place is the dinner menu, but Jade is only in third place. So the only thing Jurian could wish this dude was good luck. The joint animal hunting lesson has come to an end. All the freshmen in the advanced class, including Jurian, managed to survive. And so, several months had passed since that day. The head of the academy warned that if the boy failed the exam, he would be expelled. Laughing nervously, the boy realized that he was now in danger of expulsion again. This guy was originally accepted as an honor student in the magic department on the condition that his poor academic performance would lead to expulsion. However, Magus is confident that Jurian will easily pass this exam. Coughing, the head of the Magic Academy asked to be allowed to explain something. It's time for midterm exams, and today is the Advanced Class Critter Hunt exam. Each of the students will enter the Forest of Fortitude, and if they score 20 points, the exam will be passed. Surprised at such a low threshold of passage, Raizo asked the headmaster why the hell he was making them waste their time and energy. Chris looked at his classmate with disdain and asked how dare he talk to the head of the academy like that. Ignoring the bully's ignorance, May just complimented him on his excellent question. Chris, on the other hand, was greatly surprised by the director's strange behavior. It's time to announce some very, very important information. Monsters are divided into a total of 5 classes. Wolves, bears, and tigers belong to the beast-like type of the first level. Monsters in the form of weapons such as swords, bows, and axes are second level. Natural disasters such as typhoons, earthquakes, and heavy rains belong to the third level of monsters. There are also monsters in the form of various diseases. Depression and the like are monsters of the 4th level. And finally, the only level 5 monster that exists in this world. His name is Time. Some of the students may have already realized what the power of monsters is. It increases with their deadly ability to kill people. While the very connection to humans remains unclear, one thing is certain. These monsters are enemies of mankind. Again, ignoring Chris's warnings to stop talking to the headmaster in that tone, Raizo irritably asked the head of the academy what they needed to do to get 20 points. "Brilliant question again, Raizo!" May just uttered admiringly, causing Chris to finally stop realizing what was wrong with the man in the first place. The first level equals 2 points, the second level equals 5 points. The general gist of the exam is clear. The principal wants the students to hunt and earn 20 points each. They would be given 5 days to complete the whole thing. Especially for their information, May just explained that this exam is conducted on an individual basis. Each student had to prove to the others that he belonged to an advanced class. While Chris was quietly laughing at him, Jurian was thinking about how he could defeat all these monsters to complete this task individually without revealing his abilities to anyone. However, since level 2 monsters were worth 5 points each, he only needed to secretly hunt down 4 of them. Turning to Sir Magus, Sia inquired about the level 3 monsters. How many points are they worth? Glancing at the girl, the head of the Magical Academy noticed that she was third among the first-year students who had asked him that question. A level 3 monster is worth 20 points. However, if students encounter a level 3 beast, they must run away immediately. Walking up to the students, Ka Ryunpi added that a level 3 monster couldn't be defeated alone. That's why the professors of the School of Magic, Ka Ryunpi and Chi Li, will be present for this exam. If any level 3 monsters show up, they will deal with him. That's right. This time, no one will be able to interfere. Not any beast, not even Jurison-kun. After all, this exam will be personally supervised by the advanced class instructor, former warrior Hyo 1. So these little ones are under full protection, and so they should only concentrate on the exam. The midterm is under scrutiny. Except that Jurian is the only one who is clearly not under scrutiny. Will this guy be able to pass the exam without his true power being revealed? Intermediate exam at the Royal School of Magic. Monster hunting exam. The first level equals 2 points. The second level equals 5 points. Goal for the exam: earn 20 points. The exam itself would be a simple matter for Jurian, but complicating matters is the fact that the guy will be closely watched by a lot of eyes. Especially dangerous among all the instructors is class teacher Hyo 1. Hello, special student. Are you aware that this is an individual exam? Chris asked, walking over to a classmate staring tensely at Hyo-won. With a nasty smirk, the nobleman remarked that in the end, all Jurian had was his ability to heal. With that power, would he be able to earn 20 points on his own? Running up to her little brother, Ella begged him not to worry and promised to help him in any way she could. Thanking his little sister, Jurian realized that maybe this would work in his favor. Soon as the exam was about to begin, Ka Ryunpi reported to the principal that he had sent all the students to their assigned seats. The head of the Magic Academy praised the instructor in turn. Meanwhile, sitting at a table nearby, Chi Li was setting up special magical tools to spy on the students. After a while, she was able to display the image of all the students on individual glass spheres. Turning back to the headmaster, the blonde-haired woman reported that all the magical tools were linked together. Taking one of the magic balls in his hand, Magus was curious as to who exactly would take the exam first. Then, the assistant in the yellow vest suggested that Her Highness must be the first to pass. She has a talent far beyond her years. Also picking up one of the magic tools, Ka Ryunpi said that the first one would be Riki, since he also seems exceptional. Chi Li, on the other hand, thinks that all the freshmen this year are excellent. After looking at her, the guy in the yellow vest asked what about the honor student? An honor student? Does he really mean that commoner? With a smirk, Jerry said that there was no way that dude would be able to take first place. It was unlikely that he would even pass the exam on his own. So it wouldn't be long before that kid would be expelled from the academy. Hearing her colleague's reasoning, Chi Li indignantly cried out that Jurian was obligated to stay in the school. In response, Jerry yelled that he had yet to even see instant full healing performed by this boy, and therefore this commoner is a nobody in his eyes. However, looking at Jurian with a magic ball, Hyo-won explained to her coworkers that it was better for them to just wait and see if he would give the exam or not. Well, Jurian was getting tired of being watched relentlessly by the instructors. Wherever he goes, a small sphere, visually similar to an eye, always flies above his head. The boy will be expelled if he fails to score 20 points. So how can he pass the exam without revealing his true abilities? Pondering this, Jurian wondered what the limit of his strength was. When you think about it, isn't instant complete healing an incredible skill in this world? But even though everyone is well aware of Jurian's healing talent, his heart still hasn't exploded. Doesn't this mean that the strength limit only applies to attack power? While the boy was pondering this, a huge rat-like monster appeared behind him from behind a tree. Ugh, how gross, Jurian muttered, turning his attention back to the enemy. At the same second, the rat opened its mouth and pounced on the guy. Before doing anything, the boy looked at the orb flying over his head to make sure he was definitely being watched. Abruptly snatching a magic tool from his pocket, Jurian pointed it at his opponent and shot a strong jet of water at him. Admiring what she saw, Chi Li shouted happily that this boy's water attack was definitely magnificent. She had never seen a disciple use the wand she had made so gracefully. Also holding a magic orb in his hand, Jerry noticed that surprisingly, this guy was actually doing pretty well. Agreeing with his colleague, Ka Ryunpi said that Jurian definitely had impressive mana. However, it proved to be too weak. He was unable to finish off the rat with this perfectly controlled but weak attack. Despite this, Jurian laughed happily. He was amused by the huge wet rat. You could tell it had just had a public humiliation. As expected, the small amount of force used doesn't bother Jurian's heart at all. At first, any display of power caused sharp pain, but now the boy had figured out why that was the case. The whole point was that he was trying to exert a lot more force than he had just used. In other words, a certain amount of force would not be fatal to him. While pondering this, Jurian saw two more giant rats show up behind the trees nearby. Emerging from the ambush, the monsters surrounded the boy and cut off all avenues of retreat. Well, thanks to these little rats, the guy will be able to answer the question that's been bothering him. What exactly is the limit to the use of power? But suddenly, an unknown creature appeared behind one of the giant rats. Seeing another opponent in front of him, Jurian fell into a stupor. No matter how you look at it, it's clearly a sword monster. This is the same monster that gets 5 points on the exam. While the guy stared at the flying sword in shock, the enemy swung his blades in his direction several times, while casually chopping off part of the head of one of the giant rats. Unfortunately, Jurian was the least bit thoughtful and looked through the moment when the enemy began to attack. The boy didn't have time to dodge the blades flying at him, so the sword monster's strike hit its target in the same second. Watching what was happening with the magic orbs, all the instructors visibly tensed up. The observation balloon flying overhead couldn't see what had happened for a while longer because of the thick smoke. As suddenly the smoke cleared and Jurian showed up, completely curing himself with instant healing. Admiring this kid's skills again, Chi-Li shouted happily. Looking thoughtfully into the magic ball, Jerry was surprised that this kid came out unharmed after receiving a critical hit. Meanwhile, Jurian looked hopefully at the opponent who had just attacked him. It's a level 2 monster, and if you kill it, the boy will get 5 points, right? What about Ella, by the way? Is she okay? Holding the shadow sword, Jade motioned for Ella to stand behind him and be careful. They, like Jurian, also came across a level 2 axe monster. Jade looked at her opponent tensely and suggested that she get this over with and then go look for Jurian. He was probably having a hard time on his own. The axe monster interrupted the guy's speech, raising one of his arms high above his head. Seeing this, Ella and Jade realized that the enemy was about to attack them. But when had the blade on his arm gotten so massive? At the same instant, the monster swung its axe, sending a sharp blade of mana at Jade. The monster swung the axe, sending a sharp blade of mana at Jade. But only the enemy's blow was so strong that the magic swordsman began to slowly retreat, unable to withstand such a powerful pressure. Trying to stop the mana blade, Jade couldn't understand where this monster got such incredible strength from. Suddenly, running up behind her friend, Ella stuffed her sword with magic and slammed it into the magical blade as well. Looking at her in surprise, the guy felt that together, they were able to hold off the enemy's attack. Then, the two of them pressed down on the hilt of their swords, thus completely deflecting the magic blade flying at them. Jade looked at the red-haired girl and thanked her for her help. Ella asked him not to do that and reminded him that they were friends. Looking hopefully at Ella, the magical swordsman clarified that they were close friends. Not paying attention to his words, the red-haired girl noticed that her hands were still trembling. Level 2 monsters are much stronger than level 1 monsters. If Jurian is hit by a level 2 monster before he has a chance to use healing, he may be seriously injured. Clenching her fist, Ella was determined not to give up for anything. Turning around on Jade, she suggested he quickly deal with this monster and go find Jurian. Of course, the magical swordsman agreed and supported his friend's attitude. As he began to materialize the shadow sword in his hand, the guy took the hint that Jurian would probably need the help of his friends to earn points. After coming face to face with a level 2 monster, Ella and Jade gained confidence. There's no denying that their opponent is strong, but he's not invincible. Unfortunately, the confidence of these two very soon literally evaporated. It only took 1 second for them to fall into despair. A level 3 hurricane beast appeared. At the same time in the instructor's room, the teachers of the Magic Academy continued to monitor the students with magic orbs. The exam was going according to plan, and nothing portended trouble. Just as suddenly, the magic tool in Chi-Li's hands cracked and stopped showing an image. Staring in surprise at the shattered balloon, the dazed blonde woman asked what happened. The head of the Magic Academy was immediately reported to the incidents in zones A2, B3, and C1. A level 3 monster was seen in each square. Currently, a total of 3 third-level monsters have been seen. Tensing up, May just noticed that everything going on was very strange. In fact, this forest is actually a springboard intended for freshmen. Hence, only 1st and 2nd level monsters should have appeared here. However, today, level 3 monsters appeared. This is clearly not an ordinary occurrence. That was why the head of the Magic Academy ordered Karayunpi, Jerry, and Hyo-won to go to places where level 3 monsters had been spotted. Teachers, no matter what happens, have a duty to protect the students who are the future of the kingdom. Meanwhile, the monster that had appeared near Ella and Jade had already begun to rage. Looking hopelessly at the enemy, Ella couldn't believe this was happening. How could this even happen? Where did a level 3 monster come from? Is this some kind of joke? How on earth are ordinary freshmen supposed to fight against such a monster? Where should they start? How should they attack? Noticing his friend's desperation, Jade shouted to her to focus. He explained to the girl that the teachers would be arriving very soon, and so the student's task in such a situation was simply to stay out of harm's way. Thanking the guy for bringing her to her senses, Ella promised to try not to make contact with the enemy. But there's something else that's been bothering the girl a lot. Is everything okay with Jurian? While she was thinking about this, she felt herself begin to be lifted off the ground by a very powerful wind. Holding out his classmate's hand, Jade asked her to grab onto it sooner rather than later. When Ella took his hand, the guy thrust the blade of the shadow sword into the ground and asked his friend not to let go of his hand, whatever happened. However, these two seemed to have completely forgotten that there was more than one opponent fighting against them right now. Jade felt danger approaching nearby and he was briefly stunned. Turning his head, he saw the axe monster charging another attack. Shouting to Ella to dodge, the guy jumped away with her, thus getting away from the magic blade. This attack formed a huge crevice in the place where the students were just standing. It's scary to imagine what would have happened to them if they hadn't jumped back in time. Lifting up, Jade looked at his friend and asked if she was okay. Hearing an affirmative answer, the magical swordsman remarked that they were having quite a bit of bad luck today. One crisis after another. The enemy is too strong and we don't know when help will arrive. If these two do nothing, they could be dead before the instructors arrive. After thinking it over, Jade and Ella realized that they simply had no other choice. To save themselves, they must break through. And the best way to escape from a strong enemy is to finish off a weaker enemy who is blocking the way to retreat. Snapping out of his seat, Jade ran the other way away from his classmate to divert his opponent's attention to himself. Just as the axe monster was about to attack, the guy activated the 8th form of the dark sword, placing a shield in front of him, which blocked the strike. As expected, if you don't give the enemy time to activate his most powerful skill, Jade manages to block any hit. The distraction plan worked. When Ella noticed that the monster wasn't looking at her, she ran around it from behind and struck it with her mana-filled sword. Hitting the exact target, the girl was going to finish him off with one blow, cutting him in half. But noticing the result of her attack, an irritated Ella tisked unhappily. Although she applied all her strength into this strike, she still lacked a couple of centimeters to finally shred her opponent's body. Luckily, Jade was able to recover very quickly from the monster axe attack. He shouted that he was all right and rushed straight into battle. Looking at her classmate, Ella couldn't immediately recognize him. "Are you sure it's Jade?" Even before Jade entered the magical academy, his mother had asked him if he really intended to sacrifice himself to protect his family. Saying he was fine, the guy replied that he was not at all afraid to take risks for his family. Hearing such words, the mother looked thoughtfully at her son. Then she told Jade that he was wrong. The boy doesn't need to sacrifice himself for his family. He must always use his strength only to protect himself, his comrades, and citizens. He does not need to worry about his family. That is the role of a magic sword wielder. In fact, Jade didn't show his best behavior when he faced Laurel. If he had fought seriously, his family would have been destroyed by the high-ranking nobles. However, if he hadn't chased Laurel away, he would have lost a friend. Actually, Jade thought it was a problem he should sacrifice himself for. However, there are people in this world who don't want this guy to die. Jurian, who took care of him when he was injured. A concerned Ella, asking Jade not to sacrifice himself to protect them. And, of course, his little brother and sister. All the recent events have greatly affected Jade and his worldview. Upon approaching the enemy, the guy activated the first form of the magic sword, thus chopping the axe monster into several pieces. Seeing this, the surprised Ella couldn't understand what it was. What weapon had he just used? This attack was so fast that the girl didn't even have time to consider it. Now Ella realized how amazing Jade was. Marveling at her classmate's incredible strength, the red-haired girl didn't notice the level 3 monster flying towards her from behind. Hearing Jade yell at her to be careful, a frightened Ella turned on her foe. You even moment a strong wind blew, instantly lifting the two students high into the sky. With each passing second, they climbed higher and higher. The normal wind lifted them several hundred meters into the sky, not giving them a chance to grab onto anything. Suddenly, the wind stopped blowing and Ella and her friend began to fall down from a great height. Looking down fearfully, Ella realized that if they fell to the ground, they would surely die. They had no chance of surviving in such a situation. However, the two were picked up by Jurian, who had been waiting for their arrival, by wind magic just off the ground. He knelt down gently on his sister's lap, but he didn't bother with Jade, tossing him to the ground carelessly. Actually, if truth be told, Jurian had only come here to see a level 3 monster with his own eyes. He was very lucky to meet his friends here. Rising to his feet, Jade was glad that the boy was all right. Then, he warned that the teachers were on their way. They give 20 points for it, right? Jurian clarified, looking at the tornado monster with interest. How about the 3 of us try to beat him? Jade looked at his friend dumbfounded at such a reckless suggestion. How could he even think of such a thing after seeing that terrifying creature? Ella, on the other hand, felt ashamed that she was scared. Her little brother really is a braver person. Ignoring Ella and Jade's surprised faces, the excited Jurian couldn't stop thinking about the fact that he could get as much as 20 points just by finishing off this weak monster. A few minutes ago, when Jurian was about to start fighting a level 2 monster, the guy just found out he can use a certain limit of power. But as of yet, he doesn't know exactly how much force he can exert to keep his heart from exploding. So it's time to find out exactly what this limit is. At the same moment, just as Jurian was about to test himself in a battle against second-level monsters, he looked at the balloon flying in the sky and noticed that it had cracked. Seeing that thing broken, the guy realized that no one else was watching him. Except, why did it happen? What's going on? As he pondered this, the boy heard the soft squeak of a small mouse behind him. Abruptly turning around, Jurian ripped off the head of the first-level monster with a single sweep of his hand, asking it not to interfere with his thinking. As expected, the boy's heart is still fine. There isn't even the slightest bit of pain, which means there really isn't anyone watching him. Frustrated by the clockhead, the guy realized there was no point in holding back in such a case. Since no one is watching, Jurian cannot conduct his experiment to test the limit of his power. You know what I mean, right? The guy asked, looking at his second-level opponent. But then the boy sighed and realized that he seemed to be talking to himself. After all, the sword monster had already been blown to pieces by his mere glance. Okay, actually, Jurian had punched it in once. Kneading his hand, the guy remarked that it was refreshing not to have to worry about being watched. Suddenly, the boy heard someone scream somewhere far away in the forest. He immediately recognized the voice of his younger sister, Ella. When all the instructors left to help the students, Magus asked Chili to try to fix the magic ball quickly. Surprisingly, all the magic tools broke at the same time. Even though third-level monsters had appeared, it still seemed strange. Renovations aren't going smoothly either. What the hell's going on in there? After looking at the third-level monster with interest, Jurian suggested that the classmates try to get the three of them to deal with it. Such an unexpected offer surprised Jade and Ella greatly. However, no sooner had they discussed the plan than the monster tornado immediately let a powerful torrent of wind blow into the students. Only unlike last time, when the monster attacked across the square, now it was targeting Jade alone. Only a moment had passed, and the guy who had just recently stood next to Ella had already flown a few dozen meters away from her. At a tremendous speed, the magical swordsman's back slammed into the tree. Seeing this, Ella Strong was afraid for her classmate. Yes, a normal person under those circumstances would have died on the spot. You're amazing, as always, Jade said with a satisfied smile. Feeling relieved, the magical swordsman looked up at Jurian and swept his healing perfectly. Now Jade realized what the guy meant. When Jurian suggested dealing with this monster, he didn't mean that they should actually defeat it. After recovering from his injuries, Jade snapped out of his seat and called Ella along with him to attack. The true meaning of the phrase, "let's deal with it," is to get your act together and meet this creature face to face with the intent to win. It's true that it's impossible to escape from a level 3 monster. Even if these three clumsily tried to escape, they might be hurt even more. The probability that they will die will be much higher compared to when they give battle to the enemy. So they should gather their strength and face this creature with determination, taking care of each other. That was the point, wasn't it, Jurian? But unfortunately, this was not at all what Jurian had in mind. With a doomed look at his classmates, the boy realized that he had made a mistake. In fact, the boy hoped his friends would decide to just run away. Then, right as they were fleeing, he would secretly grab that monster while no one was watching. And now things haven't gone according to plan. How can they deal with this creature in a situation like this when Jurian can't even use his own powers? Wind Spirit, grant me your power! Rika's voice suddenly came from nearby. Activating the 1,000 wind swords, the gray-haired guy pointed at the enemy and used compression. The swords turned into a huge pointed spear. Adjusting his aim, Ricky coolly looked at the enemy and commanded a shot. Thousands of wind swords stabbed lightning fast into the monster's chest, piercing through it. Such an attack finished off the enemy almost instantly, thus guaranteeing Rika 20 points for the exam. Seeing the dumbfounded faces of his classmates, the gray-haired guy was surprised that when they came face to face with a level 3 monster, they didn't run away. Putting away his sword, the Viscount's eldest son remarked that they possessed an admirable knightly spirit. And while Jurian couldn't believe that 20 points had been so brazenly stolen from right under his nose, Ella was surprised that her classmate had defeated a level 3 monster so easily. Hey, who do you think you are, stealing our victory? Jade said indignantly, casting a scornful glance at Ricky. Screaming that they could very well have defeated this monster on their own, the boy yelled to his classmate not to pretend to be cool. Well, at least in front of Ella. You're a real thief. Why the heck did you steal my points? Jurian asked, squatting down like a street gangster. With a perplexed look at the boy, Ricky said that he would gladly give those points away. As soon as he said that, all the displeasure on Jurian's face suddenly seemed to evaporate. The boy asked if he meant what he said, pleased by his dear classmate's kindness. After confirming that, Ricky clarified that he didn't think it was a waste of time. Giving points to talents that benefit the kingdom is a noble cause. Last year, Ricky probably would have just ignored the unremarkable student with the black brooch. But this boy wasn't as ordinary as he'd originally thought. The gray-haired guy promised to give the points if Jurian proved he deserved it. If he showed similar or equivalent abilities, even if just a little, Ricky would immediately give him all 20 points. This year's freshmen are very different. A girl with a talent for sword fencing is the first special mage girl. Also, there may be a skilled swordsman among them, and Ricky is beginning to guess who that swordsman really is. If the freshmen have that kind of talent, this guy wants to guide them before they lose their way. You killed a level 3 monster! Suddenly, a vile voice was heard from behind Rika. At that very second, the students felt something strange. It was as if someone had taken over their minds. I don't want to die, the four-armed, unknown creature said eerily. Immediately after these words, all but Jurian sat down on their knees and drew their swords and brought the blades to their throats. Looking at them puzzled, Jurian saw his friends slit their throats. After curing them with instant full healing, the guy called out to this strange four-armed creature. Trying to figure out what was even standing in front of him, the boy asked the monster what it was. Holding onto his jacket, the four-armed creature explained that he had the power to make people kill themselves. His name is Gloom, and he is a level 4 monster. From the horror he had experienced, a shocked Jade was completely exhausted, and his lunch today came right out. Holding his neck, Ricky had no way of knowing what was going on. Right now, he was thrusting his sword into his neck. Looking at the monster, the gray-haired guy saw scars on his wrist and neck. Like the others, Jurian clearly didn't expect to see a level 4 monster here. Looking at the boy perplexed, Marak asked why he still hadn't killed himself. Jurian, in turn, asked the monster if he really thought that was a normal question. However, the creature explained that there was nothing abnormal about it. Killing yourself in front of the darkness is natural for humans, isn't it? Grinning, Jurian noted that the statement made sense. Honor student! No, Jurian! I'm convinced of your abilities! Ricky muttered, placing a hand on his classmate's shoulder. Instant complete healing, from self-inflicted wounds to psychic attacks, everything was cured. Urian's healing is an ability that the kingdom absolutely needs, and so no matter what happens, Ricky is sure to protect him. Pointing his sword at his opponent, the gray-haired fellow summoned the great spirit of Wii. Noticing the way this boy had placed a barrier of powerful wind flow around him, Gloom marveled that he knew how to use the great spirit's protection. With a disdainful look at his enemy, Ricky said that the monster had no right to mention the great spirit. Enjoying the slight cool breeze, Jurian remembered that this was the first time he had seen a creature that was not human, but could communicate. A creature with intelligence and consciousness is definitely a level 4 monster. But why would such a high-level monster be within the realm? While Ricky was trying to figure it out, Gloom moved closer to him and whispered eerily again, I don't want to die. Grasping the sword with both hands, the gray-haired guy brought the blade to his neck. Jade and Ella, still reeling from last time, did the same. In the next second, blood spatters flew in different directions. Looking at the monster with disdain, Jurian warned him to stop doing that. Turning back to the boy, Mrak couldn't understand why he had failed to capture the brat's consciousness. Then, when Jurian activated instant healing, the monster noticed that his victims had died like that for some reason. It turns out it wasn't a coincidence, or a miracle the first time. Shifting his gaze to Jurian, Mrak mouthed that he had another target. Now he definitely needs to kill this little brat since he's interfering with their plans. But with his sword clutched tightly in his hand, Ricky said that he wouldn't let his enemy do that. He would finish the bastard no matter what. Jurian withstood the attacks of a level 4 monster. This boy has an amazing magical tolerance. Moreover, he manages to apply instant full healing even from the attacks of a level 4 monster. Each ability surpasses the student's skills and is more like that of a heroic knight. But Rika didn't have time to protect Jurian. As he stood next to the boy helping his sister, darkness was ready to crush him with his huge hand. Seeing this horrible scene, the gray-haired guy cried out in despair, realizing that he would not be able to save his classmates. In the same instant, a black skull appeared above the monster's head, followed by several blows with invisible magic blades on Gloom's body. Unfortunately, the creature easily dodged every attack of the first form of the Shadow Sword. After realizing that his strongest hold didn't even scratch this monster, Jade realized that there was no way they could resist this opponent. Seeing that Gloom was about to crush his classmate, the magical swordsman shouted to Jurian to run away. No, that won't be necessary, Ricky said suddenly. Immediately after saying that, he directed a powerful stream of wind at his friends, thus throwing them out of the battlefield. Remembering that this had happened to him before, It finally reached Jurian that this guy turned out to be Tien's brother. That time in the third trial of the entrance exam, that girl was awesome. Apparently these two are siblings, because they are similar not only in appearance, but also in their style of magic. Noticing his victims flying away, Gloom looked puzzled at the boy standing in front of him. Noting that apparently that was all this gray-haired guy could do, the monster wondered why he didn't run away himself. Grinning tensely, Ricky explained that there was no way he could have escaped from Gloom. Clutching his sword in his hand, the boy added that he expected to buy time and become a true warrior. Warrior? I see. Are you trying to buy time to appear as a warrior in the eyes of your friends? The high-level monster asked, looking at the helpless boy with pity. You try to appear to be a warrior, but you're really just a coward, aren't you? As much as Ricky didn't want to admit it, Gloom was right. The boy's hands were shaking, and he wanted to get out of here, but he had no choice but to fight. He has only one chance to survive this battle, to immobilize the enemy and escape. Concentrating all of his power, Ricky summoned the spirit of V and directed all of his crushing power at the monster. Such determination the monster clearly hadn't expected from the already desperate little boy. That was why, because he had underestimated his opponent, Merak didn't have time to dodge the attack. However, the creature easily managed to repel this attack. Dispelling the smoke with his hands, the monster reminded the gray-haired guy that until now, he had only used psychological attacks and had never attacked directly yet. Seeing that huge green hand flying straight at his face, Ricky realized that this was where he was going to die. I just came face to face with a level 3 monster, but it turns out there's a stronger opponent here. Karyunpi appeared out of nowhere and said. Taking his student under his armpit, the instructor asked the creature if it was a level 4 monster named Gloom. Looking disdainfully at the man unknown to him, Merak said he saw no point in answering him. Noticing that it was rather rude, Karyunpi activated the super speed wind. Meanwhile, Jade and Ella landed on the grass next to each other and passed out. Jurian in turn hovered in the air above them. Although it couldn't be said at first glance, but as the boy looked at his friends, he was overwhelmed with anger. 4th level creatures are the main force of monsters that have appeared in the kingdom. Whichever way you look at it, it's an emergency. Realizing how dangerous Gloom could be, Karyunpi activated the supersonic wind. The entire surroundings immediately shook with a wind-driven shockwave. Covering his ears to keep from going deaf, Ricky couldn't believe that such a sound could be from the wind. The supersonic explosion that erupted was heard throughout the forest. And that sound even reached the head of the Magic Academy. It immediately reached Majest that the cause of this explosion was Karyunpi activating the supersonic wind. Calling the principal over, a worried Chi Li, still trying to recover the magic tool, reported that something was wrong. No matter how many level 3 monsters are in the forest, it is impossible for magic tools to be destroyed all at once. Moreover, all of them are not even repairable. Turning back to the head of the Magic Academy, the frightened woman added that there was also interference in communication. It can only mean that a much stronger enemy has emerged. Deciding to see if the connection was working, Magus tried to call Hyo-1, but all his attempts have been in vain. That means things are much worse than he expected. The unexpected appearance of a level 3 monster, while at the same time there is an unnatural destruction of the communication device. This can't be a coincidence. A monster that managed to purposely destroy all communications has a high level of intelligence. It's most likely a level 4 creature. Angry, Magus tried to figure out why such a thing had happened during his freshman year exams. Maybe the target was a princess. Whatever it is, the opponent is clearly greatly mistaken in underestimating the head of the Magic Academy. Walking towards the exit, the principal warned Chi Li that until the Kingdom Knight arrived, he would go to the scene to protect the students. Right now, Magus only hopes that Karyunpi doesn't die and waits for backup. At the same time, Karyunpi was preparing to take the fight against a level 4 monster. Gloom was annoyed that this man was looking down on him. Extending his arms a few meters forward, the monster shouted to the man to know his place, and not to think they were on the same level. Noticing that the enemy had gone on the attack, Ricky was scared for his teacher. But Karyunpi himself remained cool-headed, and one got the feeling that he knew what to do. Dropping her cloak, the Winx Fairy dodged the blows of her enemy and launched a counterattack. Right on the run, the man summoned the Sword of Wind. Jumping high into the air, Karyunpi aimed the blades of his sword straight at Gloom's forehead, preparing to pierce his head and quickly end this battle. As expected, this battle was not to end so quickly. Extending his arm again, the monster brought his palm up to the instructor's head. The very next second, the creature clenched its fist tightly. However, without losing his composure, Karyunpi once again dodged the attack and flew behind his opponent's back. Gloom noticed the danger approaching from behind, but he had no time to turn around. Still standing with his back to the man, the monster again tried to grab him with his huge hand. Just like last time, Karyunpi dodged with ease, still holding his wind sword in a comfortable position to attack. Looking at the creature, the man noticed that his opponent was rather slow for a level 4 monster. Watching this incredible battle, Ricky couldn't stop marveling at his teacher's tremendous movement speed. As expected, Instructor Karyunpi would have no trouble defeating even a level 4 monster. "I don't want to die," came suddenly from Gloom's lips. Realizing what this could mean, Ricky shouted to the teacher to try his best to resist, and, unlike his students, Karyunpi only stabbed himself in the leg instead of the throat. When the man came to his senses, he saw that for some reason he had stabbed his own leg with a sword. The power of the 4th level monster Gloom makes people want to kill themselves. Laughing nastily, the 4-armed creature asked the wounded man what happened to his arrogance. These words come to Karyunpi's mind instantly, overwhelming him with despair and leading him to helplessness. Totally out of the blue, this man wants to commit suicide, and his mind is telling him that he has to do it. Biting his lip, the instructor realized that there was no way he should be depressed. After struggling to rise to his feet, he took out his bloody sword without asking his opponent what his purpose was. Why did a level 4 monster that had been inactive for years appear now? Laughing even harder, Marak noticed that the man had changed his strategy to gathering information after receiving the blow. Preparing to launch another attack, the monster explained that he and his kin were going to destroy all humans. Well, at least that's what the humans themselves think. Worried about his teacher, Ricky explained that he had bought enough time, and now they needed to escape from here together. Tensely looking at the enemy, Karyunpi mentally agreed with his student. "We need to think wisely now. This man didn't come here to kill level 4 monsters. So far, not a single student had died. Karyunpi must quickly return to the kingdom and report the appearance of the 4th level." However, Gloom wasn't about to let his victims escape. As soon as the creature activated its next skill, Ricky and his teacher fell to their knees and began to pant. They could no longer move or resist the enemy in any way. Their minds had completely surrendered to the darkness. Looking at the two of them gasping, the 4-armed monster couldn't contain its admiration. For a while longer, the creature enjoyed this beautiful sight, but then it decided to end the show. After wishing these people a good night, Gloom was about to crush them to the ground with a huge palm. At the same moment, Tian felt something unusual. She immediately thought something terrible was happening to her older brother. The bright light blinded the eyes of the darkness, already preparing to finish off its victims. A 6-winged girl appeared in front of him, exuding a bright light. In this girl, the monster saw the Great Wind Spirit V. "What, the Great Wind Spirit V? Am I your friend or something?" The girl clarified, looking at the monster irritably. Asking how dare he not use Nim when addressing her, the Wind Spirit Vi ripped off her enemy's arm. By the way, in Korean, Nim is used to pay respects. This is the Great Wind Spirit V. Among the only 4 great spirits in this world, she is the most selfish being with a disgusting character. After apologizing to the Great Spirit, Gloom admitted that he had been too rude and he had shown insufficient respect. However, great spirits by rule never interfere with other ecosystems. And if that's the case, then what's V doing now? The beings who govern nature and order in this world are called the 4 great spirits. Among them, the Great Wind Spirit V is the most selfish with a disgusting character. When Marak asked what such a creature was doing here right now, V explained that she had only come to make arrangements. The condition of the Great Wind Spirit would be not to kill the 2 currently lying at her back. In exchange for that, V will not interfere even if the monster kills other people. After all, he didn't come here to kill those 2, did he? After hearing V's terms, Gloom was surprised that a great spirit directly involved in the maintenance of nature was negotiating with him. And it would be something important, but she's doing this for 2 wussy people? Then the Great Wind Spirit explained that these people were good-looking, and she likes pretty things. And that means V clearly doesn't like Marak. Ignoring her hurtful words, the monster reminded her that initially, when it came to great spirits, everyone said they wouldn't directly interfere with the ecosystem. Asking where he heard such a thing, the Wind Spirit asked him not to procrastinate and decide quickly. There were only 2 choices. Either he would fail to achieve his goal and die at V's hands, or he would agree and leave. Hearing this from the Wind Spirit, Marak tried to figure out whether to regard the words as a suggestion or a threat. Obviously, fighting a great spirit just to kill these 2 doesn't fulfill the original purpose. But at the same time, Darkness isn't going to forget that V showed up precisely to protect both of these people. If the monster let them leave now, then in the future, They would borrow all the power of the Great Spirit to start protecting others. So, it would be best for Gloom to go against the Great Spirit right now and kill these people. With a pitying look at the monster about to finish off Ricky and Karyunpi, the Wind Spirit asked him to look at himself and how pathetic he was. Extending her arm forward, V took aim at her opponent and snapped her fingers. The powerful flow of wind tore the level 4 monsters to pieces. The only thing left of Gloom was his legs, which continued to stand still. All the other parts of his body just fell to the ground. Sensing that this dude was not at all good at negotiating, the Great Wind Spirit suggested that he honorably accept his punishment for his incompetence. She uses her strength and power to make this monster die 4 more times. Without letting Gloom die, the girl snapped her fingers and ripped him to shreds again with a windswept stream. Asked to understand her, V explained that she was negotiating because, after all, she is a great person. Right now, she could easily destroy this monster on the spot, but she doesn't because she hopes to negotiate. The only thing left of Gloom was a small, nasty puddle. A second later, the level 4 monster fully recovered, taking its original form. Realizing it had no other choice, the creature agreed to make a deal with the Wind Spirit. Whatever the terms, it was bound to reach its goal today. That's the only reason why Gloom decided to make concessions. Looking irritated at the monster, V asked what concessions we were even talking about. He just doesn't have a choice. After saying that, the girl advised the creature to get the hell out of here if it didn't want to get up a little puddle again. Well, the deal was done. Darkness would not kill Ricky and his teacher, and the Wind Spirit would not interfere with the creature's business. But still, V is worried about the fact that the monsters have become active again. Deciding not to let it go to her head, the Wind Spirit happily hugged the unconscious Ricky lying there, exclaiming how happy she was to see him. Tapping him on the head with her fist, the winged girl asked the boy to wake up and let her hear his voice. Hearing that Ricky was still breathing, the Great Wind Spirit was glad that this guy was now safe. And besides him, V also took care of someone else. Karyunpi is another person she contracted with, except that the Wind Spirit is alarmed that this man still hasn't used his full power. Meanwhile, somewhere in the forest, the heavy footsteps of a monster can be heard. Running away from the Great Wind Spirit, Gloom couldn't believe that he was in such a humiliating situation. Stopping where he was, he realized that he couldn't waste any more time, and now he had to act decisively. First, the monster fulfill the purpose of his being here, and then trample the growing saplings until this unpleasant feeling is refreshing. No one gets out of this forest alive. After saying this, the 4-level monster noticed the suspicious silence that had suddenly fallen in the surroundings. At the same instant, something landed not far from him with a loud rumble. Looking at the huge green beam of magic, Gloom tried to figure out what was going on. But as the smoke from the explosion cleared and the bright green light stopped blinding his eyes, the creature saw something he definitely wasn't expecting. In front of him stood the same little boy who was always treating his friends when they cut their throats. Looking under his feet, Jurian admitted that he hadn't learned from his mistakes. He hesitated again, even when his sister was injured. He couldn't find a way to solve this problem without revealing his abilities. Approaching the boy, Merak wondered why he still hadn't run away. The monster then asked the guys not to worry, explaining that even if he ran away, everyone would still die. "Disappear! All hope here today will turn to despair and fear!" yelled the creature, trying to press down on Juriana's psyche. Grabbing the boy's neck, the monster began to squeeze it with great force. Lifting his victim off the ground, Gloom decided to tell him one truth. The hands of someone who is attempting suicide are more desperate than anyone else's. However, Jurian was clearly not comfortable with such a truth. After ripping off his opponent's arm, the guy asked him to stop acting like he was forcing others to commit suicide. It's just some bullshit. In fact, this nothingness just can't kill anyone on its own. Darkness is nothing. Jumping back, the monster had nothing to say to that and threw all his strength to finish off the strongest enemy in his life. In those moments, memories of his sister thrusting the blade down her throat flashed through Jurian's mind. That's right. Now the boy had correctly assessed the strength of his opponent. Raising his fist to strike, Jurian finally decided that from now on, he would not hesitate to save someone he cared about. Striking the creature, the guy formed a wide quarry about 1 kilometer long in front of him. The level 4 monster, Gloom, was destroyed. With the appearance of the 4th level that had been lurking for the past few years, the Ryrenta kingdom called an emergency meeting in the capital, led by King Brihidin. For several years, there was no information about the level 4 monsters. But then he showed up at the exam site of the School of Magic, threatening students and teachers. At this time, Rika's teacher and student who were on the scene protected the students from the powerful enemy. Afterward, they lost consciousness, but remained unharmed. It seems that the great spirit of We protected them. After listening to Principal Magis's report, Viscount Drade suggested that perhaps V had engaged in a fierce battle with the fourth level, and most likely they were fighting on equal footing. Everyone has already seen the aftermath of this battle. It's scary to even imagine the struggle that may have resulted in changing the landscape of a huge part of the forest. Noticing that since the fourth level was able to fight on equal footing with the wind spirit, Viscount Race assumed that the enemy had become stronger than it was before. For the past few years, his power has only grown to destroy humanity. If one fourth level can fight a great spirit with such fury, there is no hope for humanity. Asking the other chairs of the meeting to settle down, Viscount Zerdus asked his colleagues to remember where they were. They stand first and foremost before His Majesty, and that is not to be forgotten. Then, agreeing that the matter was panic and couldn't be helped, the long-haired knight reminded him that although level 4 had gotten stronger, humans weren't lagging behind in development either. The system has become more reliable, and each knight's strength shines even more. The commander of the Royal Knights, Zia Lefton, can confidently promise the king that if the humans remain vigilant and current, humanity will never succumb to such creatures. Agreeing with his subordinate, King Bridgeton added that the strength of people lies in their ability to prepare for crises to mend with them. After explaining this, the head of state asked the director to find the penetration route of the level 4 monster and take action. The task of the commander of the Royal Knights is to make sure that each fighter is thoroughly prepared to protect the citizens at all times. After bowing, Director Magus told His Majesty that he had another matter he wished to discuss. As everyone knows, every year there is a friendly competition with the Empire, but this year, Magus would like to cancel the event. Upon thinking about it, the king remembered that it was an annual event where students of the kingdom compete against students of the Empire based on their skills. Confirming this, Magus explained that the competition will likely have to be postponed this year due to the alarming monster movement. However, Reyes objected, saying that it was nonsense. Had the king forgotten the Empire's recent statement? The Empire appreciates the kingdom's quick response to protect its citizens from a level 4 creature. Monsters are by no means capable of threatening humanity, and humans are overwhelmingly stronger than monsters. Therefore, the Empire hopes that the annual friendly competition will go on as usual. At a time when the Empire, a state that rivals the Rirente Kingdom, is showing such confidence, showing cowardice would be unacceptable. Plus, the Empire definitely want to win the competition this year, as they have suffered a string of consecutive defeats over the past 3 years. Objecting to Viscount Reyes' suggestion, Magus reminded him that level 4 monsters were highly intelligent. There was no way they would appear without a reason. But still unwilling to agree with the Academy director, Reyes asked His Majesty how the other countries, including the Empire, would treat the kingdom if the competition was cancelled. In the future, because of such an ill-considered move, Rirente might lose its dominance, as the Empire would realize the tense situation with monsters in the state and start using them for their own purposes. And when Magus said that he couldn't put the disciples in danger, Reyes shouted that it wasn't that dangerous compared to the situation if the kingdom and the Empire started a conflict. Thinking about it, Zerdus mused that if the monsters suddenly attacked, the Rirente really couldn't stand up to them if the knights were busy fighting a war with the Empire. However, Magus believes that the students were in danger because of the kingdom's arrogance. There was no certainty that only one level 4 monster would appear in the competition. Tensely looking at the Academy headmaster, Reyes clarified, did it really mean that if monsters appeared, Rirente would lose? Asking everyone present to stop, King Bridgeton remarked that the opinions of both sides were valid. Without confirming the purpose of the monsters, holding an event may not be a good idea. But if the kingdom refuses to compete, the Empire will use the refusal as an excuse to engage in political maneuvers with other nations. In other words, the kingdom is facing a dilemma. In such a case, the state leadership has no choice but to ask the students directly. The opinions of those who have fought bravely against level 4 monsters can help with this problem. But in addition to teacher Karyunpi and apprentice Rika, the king asked the principal to bring in a special student of magic, Jurian. A few hours later, a castle in the capital of the kingdom of Rirente. Sitting in front of the king, Jurian can't understand how it could have come to this. What is going on here? After bowing to His Highness, Magus reported that teacher Karyunpi along with his students Riki and Urian had arrived. Asking the people kneeling in front of him to raise their heads, King Brixton remarked that their calmness and reaction during this recent crisis with the appearance of a level 4 monster was commendable. Thanks to the courage of these three, the peace and stability of the kingdom was preserved. Noticing Jurian, one of the Viscounts asked his colleague if this boy was a commoner student. It means that their sons have failed in their attempt to eliminate these scum. In the meantime, Bridgeton explained to the heroes that their awards would be prepared gradually. Besides, the king didn't summon these three for that reason alone. A friendly competition with the Empire is scheduled for a few months from now. The competition not only strengthens the friendship between the two countries, but is also an important event that attracts the attention of other countries. However, the truth is that this show evaluates the power of each country. The winning country gets more sponsors and better prospects. After honestly telling all of this, Bredton rose from his throne and abruptly added that the Ryrente Kingdom was considering dropping the competition this year. It's all the fault of that fourth level. No one knows if and when the monsters will reappear. The king summoned the heroes here to personally hear the opinions of those who had directly encountered the fourth level. Hearing the king's words, Ricky remembered Gloom's face and immediately turned pale. Noticing the frightened look on the student's face, Bridgeton asked what was wrong. Telling the boy to share his honest opinion, the king asked him to feel free to speak up. Then, the Viscount standing nearby asked the three heroes if they couldn't speak because of fear. Well, even though they were directly confronted with such a horrible situation, such a reaction could only mean that the pride of the Magic Academy had crumbled. In that condition, it might have been best to postpone the competition. Without letting the Viscounts finish, Jurian turned to the king with a bow, saying that he, a special student of magic, was ready to answer His Majesty's question. First of all, Jurian is honored to be invited here, and he is truly grateful for Mr. Bridgeton's praise. And if those here will allow it, this kid will give his opinion on the competition. As everyone knows, Karyunpi, Ricky, and Urian encountered a level 4 monster. Undoubtedly, the enemy was incredibly strong. However, no matter how much they fought the monster, none of the three heroes succumbed to fear even for a second. Instead, they focused on finding ways to overcome this problem. If the fourth tier makes another appearance at this year's event, things won't end the same way. This time, the students and teachers of the Magic Academy will show everyone that they can defeat a level 4 monster. Such a presumptuous statement greatly surprised both Xertus and the head of Magus Academy himself. The other Viscounts were also perplexed as to why this commoner was so cocky. What was wrong with him? Even the commander of the Royal Knights, Zia Lefton, appeared shocked by such bold words. A sepulchral silence hung in the air, and the king sitting on the throne looked gravely at the boy. In the next second, Bridgeton laughed loudly, shouting that it was simply excellent. Smiling contentedly, the Lord of these lands remarked that calling these three here was the right decision. Looking at His Majesty incredulously, Jurian was of course surprised by this reaction. It was different than expected. However, this was only the beginning. Special Magic Apprentice, no, Jurian. I order you to become a representative of the kingdom and take part in the competition. Suddenly said the king, shocking everyone present. An ordinary commoner orphan will become the face of the kingdom of Ryrente in a friendly competition with the Empire. In a panic, turning to His Majesty, Viscount Reyes asked him to reconsider. The competition is a matter of pride for the kingdom. It's embarrassing to even think how other countries would perceive Ryrente if a commoner became a representative of their state. Then, gagging Reyes, Magus gave him a creepy look and reminded him that Jurian was not a commoner, but a special apprentice. Resenting this treatment of himself, the Viscount with the monocle shouted to the head of the academy to stop his jokes. Standing at Magus's side, Ricky explained to the people here that Jurian could overcome the 4th level monster's attack due to his instant full healing. He's going to play a terrific role in this competition. Hearing such words from his classmate, Jurian looked at him in confusion, not understanding why he was suddenly acting like this. Sighing, Marquis Ricaseso standing nearby said with certainty that instant complete healing was impossible. Healing technically means regeneration. It is about helping regeneration to accelerate healing, not directly healing wounds or diseases. Therefore, instant healing is theoretically impossible. After listening to Lord Ricaseso, Jurian finally realized why everyone was so surprised when they saw his healing abilities. Meanwhile, the Marquis added that it was probably a common illusion magic that made people feel no pain. And when Ricky wanted to object to Ricaseso, the head of the academy gestured for him to be quiet for a while. Getting to his feet, Magus explained to the Marquis that the magic he knows is not the whole world. The Viscounts certainly did not expect to hear such statements from the honorable head of the academy. He is talking about something that cannot be done even theoretically. Instantaneous complete healing has never been achieved by anyone in the history of mankind. However, to prove that it was possible, Magus offered to demonstrate instant complete healing right there. Shifting his gaze to Jurian, the head of the academy asked if he could do it. Of course, the boy didn't object, but he still couldn't quite understand how things had turned out this way. He had just tried to help his sister recover from Sunbae Nim's blow for a moment, and now he was kneeling in front of the king because of it. Nodding, Jurian confirmed that instant complete healing was possible. Such a statement shocked the Viscounts. Asking the boy to demonstrate his abilities, Lord Xerxes volunteered to be his test subject. Showing the scar on his arm, the man said that he received this injury on the battlefield. Originally, this scar was twice as large. Xerxes has been healing for the past few years, but this injury has never fully healed. If this student's complete healing is real, it means that he will be able to heal this severe injury as well. Realizing that such a test would be too difficult for his student, Mangas asked Duke Xerxes to wait for a moment. Urian healing is the ability to heal wounds. Healing a scar is a different matter altogether. Angry, Viscount Reyes asked the head of the academy if, in that case, he was proposing to harm anyone here. No one can claim that instantaneous complete healing exists, and therefore, no one would agree to mutilate themselves to test it to the fullest. Marcus Ricaseso in turn pointed out that a scar is also a wound. If it is indeed an instant complete healing, even it will heal. Mangas had already started to get indignant when suddenly Jurian interrupted him, saying that he was willing to try it once. In fact, the boy himself doesn't know if he'll be able to heal the scar too. He was just curious, as he hadn't encountered such a thing before. Walking up to Duke Xerxes, the boy suggested that the extraction process begin. Bringing his palm to the Viscount's scar, Jurian activated the spell. In the same second, the scar on Xerxes' arm disappeared as if it had never been there. It's not hard to imagine the look on that man's face the moment he saw that. Looking at his arm from all sides, Xerxes noticed that now, where the scar had been, was the skin of a 3-year-old child. Once again, everyone who had the honor of seeing this miracle was stunned. Even King Bridgeton couldn't contain his astonishment. This commoner wasn't just able to conjure such unfathomable magic and heal the scar. Even Duke Xerxes' sore throat, which was like a cold, had gone away. Xerxes was now convinced that this was not an illusion or an obsession. The instantaneous complete healing was definitely real. Approaching His Majesty, the commander of the Royal Knights, Zlfdin, remarked that this was not just a surprise, but a real revolution. If such abilities are used on the battlefield or in everyday life, it will have remarkable effects. Moreover, if the kingdom manages to commercialize healing, it will greatly advance medical technology. While everyone was discussing what had happened amongst themselves, Jurian couldn't help but marvel that his instant healing was working on his scars as well. Meanwhile, turning to the special apprentice, Viscount Race asked how many times a day he could use his ability. Such a question threw Jurian into a stupor, as he had never tested this. Obviously, he could use instant healing up to infinity times, but to answer something like that would be a stupid decision. So the boy told him that he was able to use full instant healing about 3 times a day. Unfortunately, even that answer turned out to be something incredible. Even more amazed at this fellow's abilities, Viscount Race asked if he could then heal the scars on his skin. Shouting at his colleague, the rest of the Viscount demanded that he not speak nonsense. This magic wasn't just for his skin. The chairman of the meeting began to bicker amongst each other, and Ricky, watching with a smile, realized once again how incredible Jurian was. Asking the Viscounts to calm down, King Bridgeton announced that the student's magical abilities had thus been proven. Jurian is qualified to be the representative of the Kingdom of Ryrente. Plus, this boy is still too young. He should at least graduate from the School of Magic before his abilities can manifest in the kingdom. Until then, the head of the academy will give him generous support. After explaining all of this to the chairman of the meeting, the king once again turned to the special student of magic, Jurian. Bridgeton suggested that the boy represent the kingdom in the upcoming competition and contribute to the state of Ryrente. Somehow, the situation seemed to have escalated a bit, and Jurian found himself in the center of everyone's attention. Anyway, the boy had nowhere to go, and so, as an honorable student mage, he had to accept His Majesty's orders. And just when the guy thought it was over, the king suddenly decided to add something. Looking at the student seriously, Bridgeton politely asked the boy to befriend his daughter. Unlike past requests, this one pleased Jurian, and he agreed almost immediately. The next day in the auditorium of the advanced class of the Academy of Magic, upon learning that Jurian had been directly recognized by His Majesty and appointed as a representative member of the first year due to his abilities, Chris squealed with envy. Grinning, Jurian explained that he himself didn't know how it had even happened. With Ella praising his friend, Jade agreed that his healing deserved recognition. Then, no longer holding back his anger, Chris walked up to Jurian and shouted that he couldn't put his pride on the line and agree to this. This upstart has to defeat him first. Telling her classmate to temper his ardor, Jade reminded him that this kid had been recognized by the king himself. Without letting his friend finish, a satisfied Jurian agreed to Chris's proposal and said he was ready to fight. The decision was made to hold the battle right in the auditorium. Chris can't recognize this commoner, and so he challenges him to fight a fair duel. If Jurian loses, he will step down as a representative member of the freshman class. As soon as the advanced class students found out about the upcoming fight, they immediately gathered in the auditorium to watch the spectacle. Raizo had even brought along some popcorn. As you might expect, Ella and Jade began to support Jurian. Standing next to Saruchi, Hina asked if it was okay that they weren't trying to stop the two of them. But then the princess fan realized who was next to her and couldn't contain her joy. At that time, Saruchi reassured her classmate, saying that everything would be fine. It's okay because the teacher is also here, and she is the organizer of this battle. This boy had received approval from the king of the Rirente kingdom, Saruti's father. From now on, the princess herself will look after him. Looking at Hayawan with a puzzled look, Jurian wondered if it was normal for a teacher to do that. Isn't it her job to prevent fights? The fight is conducted according to the rules of the Academy of Magic. It will be conducted within the framework of not hurting each other. With a wave of her hand, Hayawan asked the students if they were satisfied with such conditions. Chris only grinned in response. If it wasn't for the rules of the Magic Academy, he would have made sure that this commoner wouldn't leave in one piece. You're really persistent, Jurian remarked, looking at his classmate awkwardly. After activating some spell, the advanced class instructor began to explain the concept of combat. The duel will consist of moving a coin. Well, let me explain to you the conditions for winning this game. Move the coin to your opponent's side and hold it there for 5 seconds to win. Seems simple enough. However, the coin only moves with the help of magic. If the coin goes outside the ring, it's an automatic loss. That's it. It really is easier than expected. Yes, it may seem so at first glance, but in fact, participants need stronger magic than their opponent to move the coin. Recklessly releasing excessive amounts of energy and failing to control it will result in immediate disqualification. Participants can intentionally reduce the power of their magic halfway through to achieve a situation where their opponent accidentally pushes the coin outside the ring. So from strength to control, it all depends on strategy. It's pretty straightforward, but there's a lot to consider in this matchup to win. With a sinister lick, Chris took out his magic tool and muttered that he had wanted to crush this commoner for a long time. Taking out his wand as well, Jurian wished him luck with that. I almost forgot to tell you. Thank you, the boy added, pointing his weapon at his opponent. Thanks to this battle, Jurian can experiment with his power during midterms. First of all, Chris took his time and began to think about a plan of further action. Immediately after the match begins, he will cover the coin with his magic so that it cannot be touched. This kind of thing is sure to get this just people on edge. While Jurian decides what he should do in this situation, the nobleman will move on to the next thing in his plan. He will fix the position of the coin with strong magic on this guy's side. Eventually, Chris would be able to enjoy the puzzled expression on this commoner's face. Laughing mentally, the nobleman realized that this dude was going to have to experience the worst 5 seconds of his life today. Both players are ready, and so it's time for the contest to begin. As soon as Hayo-1 gave the command to start, Chris immediately prepared a spell, shouting for the commoner to know his place. Looking at his classmate in surprise, Goliath noted that he appeared to have decided to simply press on by force. Anyone would have done the same against a commoner. Relatively, an ordinary commoner should have weaker magic. However, all standards and stereotypes seem to have broken this time around. In the same instant that the confrontation began, the coin was suddenly at Chris's side. Not a second later, Jurian literally nailed the coin to his opponent's field. Seeing this, Hayo-1 announced a stop readiness check, then began a 5-second countdown. This boy's abilities shocked Mu. His magic is incredibly fast and precise. While agreeing with her, Sia took a moment to point out that although this guy wasn't as good as her older sister, it was also quite impressive. The countdown is already up to 4. As he struggled to pull the coin off the ground, Chris couldn't understand why it was so heavy. It felt like he was trying to lift a mountain. The nobleman had felt a similar extraordinary amount of magic during the entrance exam when Jurian used the water balloon. But anyway, Chris isn't about to lose to some commoner. Directing the full power of his magic at the coin, the guy moved it out of the way. At first, it might have seemed that the nobleman had actually managed to defeat Jurian, except, as it later turned out, that was only part of the show. Watching the confrontation, Ricky couldn't contain his laughter. He immediately noticed that Jurian was moving the coin himself on purpose. And of course, Chris couldn't help but feel it. Looking at the battlefield, the stunned fellow asked his opponent what he was up to. And what the hell was that message he scrawled on the floor? With a sly smirk, Jurian reassured his classmate and said that it didn't matter. Realizing that he was being bullied by some commoner, Chris gritted his teeth in anger. Clutching the magic tool tightly in his hand, the maddened nobleman began to actively release all of his mana. With a wary look at his classmate, Raizo immediately realized what this idiot was going to do. The next second, there was a powerful surge of mana, causing a bright yellow light to illuminate the entire audience. Chris lost control of himself and his mind and began to suffocate in a flood of raging magic. The phenomenon that everyone in the advanced class auditorium was now observing was called a magical riot. Jade asked Ella to stay behind him and activated his shadow sword. The teacher didn't expect something like this to happen to Chris either. As the fire began to rage with disproportionate force, Hyo-won told the students to be careful as there might soon be a huge explosion. "You're still the best, Chris, I assumed that." With a smile on his face, Jurian suddenly said. After saying that, he stretched out his hand in front of him. He then clenched his palm into a fist, activating a mana restriction spell. In the next instant, the magical rampage stopped. All the magic from Chris standing across from him literally evaporated. What Jurian had just done had shocked everyone, teacher and students alike. This battle was watched from heaven by the goddess Hersha. Noticing the way this boy blocked the magical rampage, the goddess smiled contentedly. Now Jurian realized. It had finally come to his attention that day that Hersha had actually been talking specifically about the limits of his power. No one for a long time could understand what had just happened. Had the special apprentice really curbed the magical rampage? The same thing is just not possible. The power of a magical rampage is much stronger and to top it all off, unstable. Suppressing it alone like that is mind-boggling. Is this for real? When Jurian first took the test, he failed to control his power and accidentally released more mana than he expected. At that time, there was someone who noticed it, but Jurian's heart still didn't break. The same thing happened today. In that case, is heartbreak a lie? Jurian used to think that if he used tremendous strength, his heart would burst. In other words, the moment his power is unleashed, his heart will burst and he will die. That's what the goddess Hersha told the boy. But now Jurian realized the limits of the standard of strength. The power released must not exceed that of the strongest hero from the human race. Hearing Jurian's inference, goddess Hersha was pleased that he had finally figured it out. That boy is right. That's exactly what she meant. When someone displays a power more powerful than the strongest hero, their heart breaks and they die. That's because this world is a world of chaos. Humans, demons, monsters, dragons, and so on. One small world unreliably supports multiple ecosystems. When the human side gains immense power, the balance of the world collapses. And the power given to Jurian is created to reshape this world. An incredibly mighty being who must walk a lonely path will bring peace through this power. Walking over to Chris, who had passed out from the magical rampage, Jurian instantly healed him. After a while, Chris did come to his senses. And while Raizo looked at him like he was trash, the teacher asked the nobleman if he would admit defeat. Sitting on the floor, Chris remembered that not long ago, he had been in a duel with a commoner. After looking around at everyone around him, the guy saw an unhurt Jurian and realized that he had lost. Out of frustration, the nobleman slammed his fist on the floor. Lowering his head, Chris muttered that the competition was an important event for the pride of the kingdom. That's why the result is more important than the status. That was why the guy had admitted his defeat in the battle with the special apprentice after all. That was the answer Hyo-won wanted to hear. People need to know how to admit defeat. Only then will they be able to grow. It was a good duel. Looking at the annoyed Chris, Jurian mentally grateful to him. Thanks to this guy, he had learned about the standard of his strength. And now it's time to summarize. The friendly competition with Empire has been confirmed. 10 Academy students will take part in the traditional competitive event. Right now, Hyo-won will announce the 5 representative members who will compete for the honor of the kingdom in a friendly competition as first-year representatives. The first, recognized by His Majesty, is Jurian. This boy's healing extends to attacking level 4 monsters in the hero zone. Undoubtedly, this power will play a significant role in group battles. Further, Saruti is undoubtedly the best first-year student, distinguished in all aspects suitable for a representative. Next, Ricky, who has outstanding abilities, is under the patronage of a great spirit. There isn't a single first-year student who can defeat this guy in close combat. Finally, Sia and Move. Although they each have superior abilities, when their powers are combined, they are truly the strongest. So here are the 5 who are representatives of the first year. Irritated, Raizo turned to the teacher and said that he didn't care much about the 5 of them. His biggest concern is what the selection criteria was. This guy thinks he's much stronger than these guys and more deserving of competing. Sensing that this was a curious question, Hyo-won decided to reveal all the cards. To put it in one sentence, there were no selection criteria. After all, with the exception of Jurian, the other four had distinguished themselves noticeably in the midterm exam. Each of them directly defeated a monster of the 3rd level or higher. Such a sudden statement struck Jade and the others hard. Could it be that even these two girls were able to defeat a level 3 monster? The original plan of the Teachers' Council was to establish similar criteria to select worthy academy representatives for the upcoming competition. But beating a 3rd-tier freshman is something that doesn't need to be compared to any grades. Simply put, it's an exceptional achievement. Until now, there had only been a single instance of a first-year student defeating a level 4 monster. It was the current student council president, Deus. Honestly speaking, imagining that someone at that age could defeat a level 3 monster is quite difficult. But as practice shows, it really is possible. If you think back, even Ella had encountered a level 3 monster. It was Ricky who came to the rescue and almost single-handedly killed the creature. Clenching her fist tightly, Ella promised herself to become stronger and to be sure to be at her little brother's side. Meanwhile, Jurian, standing nearby, was examining his new uniform and couldn't understand why its design was so old-fashioned. Mu interrupted the boy's musings by approaching him from behind. Turning to the special apprentice, the girl asked if he wanted to be with her. It's hard to describe how dumbfounded her younger sister Sia was when she heard such a suggestion. Even Ella was suddenly angry and wanted to smack that girl for saying such things. At this time, Mu explained to the boy that with his abilities, they could go from being the strongest to invincible. If Jurian wants to, the girl will make him a nobleman by marrying him. Isn't that a good thing? Looking at her classmate perplexed, Jurian asked her what she was even talking about. I don't like it. What are you, stupid? Marriage is what you do with the one you love, the guy explained, keeping a puzzled look on her face. Then, with a disgruntled tisk-tisk, he asked Mu to stop this childishness. Sia immediately ran up to Jurian and glared menacingly at him, demanding that he not insult her sister. However, Mu only stopped her by saying that this boy was right. Marriage is something you do to the one you love. That's right, Mu just forgot something important. Hearing such strange words from her older sister, Sia turned around at her in surprise. After asking the children for a moment of silence, Hyo-won, who had inexplicably picked up a huge hat and a suitcase from somewhere, demanded that the students hurry up and pack their things. They were leaving right now. Looking at the teacher in confusion, Hina wondered where they were going. In response, Hyo-won revealed that they would be going to Empire. The class was originally supposed to leave this morning, but they ended up staying a little longer to watch an interesting match. After listening to the teacher, Jurian smiled awkwardly and remarked that the developments lately were somehow too fast. Soon, the advanced class, along with their teacher, arrived in the Empire. Once in the main square of the capital, Ella couldn't believe her eyes. Is this really the Empire? The beauty of the capital city is hard to even describe in words. Looking around, the red-haired girl smelled something delicious. Meanwhile, Jade, who was walking beside her, couldn't have been happier that he'd finally had the opportunity. A little earlier, back at the academy, Hyo-won had explained to the students that the representatives had something to do first, so they would follow her. The rest of the kids would go to the Empire first, and from there, Ji-lee would guide them. Thanks to that, Jade is going on a date with Ella right now and without Jurian. That's the only reason why he's incredibly glad he wasn't chosen to represent her at the competition. It's a great chance to get closer. Approaching a classmate, the guy asked if she had ever tried grilled clams. The Empire is famous for seafood, and grilled clams are incredibly delicious. And the fact that Ella has really never tasted it, Jade finds it very sweet. Noticing how hungry this red-haired girl was, Jade suggested, before joining the others, to go get a quick taste of something. And when Ella clarified if it was even normal, the magical swordsman reassured her, saying that it wouldn't take long if they ate quickly. Besides, the boy really wants to give her a treat. Well, clams are good, but my body wants shrimp. Let's have some grilled shrimp. A voice suddenly came from behind Jade, startling him. Realizing from Ella's reaction that she had never even tasted it, Chris told her that imperial shrimp had a sweet and unique flavor. Now that Jurian is gone and not a threat, Ella and Jade's date is interfered with by this strange guy. Determined not to give up so easily, Jade intervened in their conversation and suggested they try the king crab. He knows where they grill king crab, which is many times tastier than shrimp. This delighted the hungry Ella even more, and so she immediately agreed to eat the crab. Enjoying how cute Ella was when she was hungry, Jade promised to treat her, remarking that this dish fit her dignified image perfectly. "Oh, I love king crab. Let's go there right now," Chris muttered contentedly, agreeing with his classmate's suggestion. Jade gave the minister's son a creepy look and, apologizing, explained that only 2 people were allowed in that place. So why shouldn't he go and have dinner with someone else? Then, laughing, Chris reassured his friend by clarifying that there was nothing he couldn't do. If he tried to convince the owner, he certainly wouldn't be turned down. At this time, the rest of the classmates decided to separate from these 3 and walk around the capital of the empire. Looking after them, Chris realized that acting alone in a foreign land was frivolous. While he was saying that, someone's indignant voice was heard from behind him. "Why are these uncultured people making a fuss? Are they from the kingdom?" A guy in a blue uniform and a strange headdress asked his comrades. Upon seeing them, Jade immediately guessed that they were Imperial students, as the uniforms belonged to the Imperial Academy of Magic. After studying the uninvited guests more closely, the Imperial students noticed that they seemed to be from the elite class. However, what was the Black Brooch doing here? Was the kingdom so short on talent this year that they had to accept commoners into the elite class? Rirente has really gone downhill. Angry at such remarks, Jade shouted for them not to speak so rashly. Ella is far superior to all of them put together. Hearing this, one of the Imperial students only laughed. How dare this lousy person claim that ordinary people were better than them, the first-year students of the elite class of the Imperial Magic Academy? Now facing them are Lai Irtel, ranked 9th in the rankings, Lee Jetik from 6th place, and Ho Bahru, ranked in the top 3 of the first-year student rankings. Upon learning who they had the honor of meeting, Jade and the others looked at the 3 of them tensely. Ho Bahru, this guy came in 3rd place. This could mean that it is very likely that he is one of the representatives in the friendly competition. "Bullshit," Chris said suddenly. Glittering with his noble prowess, the fellow remarked that there was no way a scumbag like this Ho Bahru could be part of the outstanding Imperial elite. The words made Ella laugh. Jade, in turn, supported his classmate, but only mentally. As expected, such a statement made the Imperial students very angry. He looked at Chris irritatedly, and Bahru remarked that the uncivilized kingdom's inhabitants didn't seem to have discerning eyes. In that case, the 3rd from the ranking offered the uninvited guests to show what they could do. Now they will fully experience the power of the Empire. As soon as 2 of the Imperial students pounced on their country's guests, Ella stepped forward and told Jade she would handle it herself. Chuckling, Chris noticed that this girl's eagerness seemed to be due to his argument with Jurian this morning. However, since these Imperial students looked too frivolous, Ella had no trouble dealing with them with 2 punches. Fainting, Lee Jetik couldn't believe that this commoner was so fast. But with a chuckle, Ella clarified that it wasn't her being too fast, but her opponents being too slow and weak. In fact, she was now beginning to doubt that the 3 of them were from the elite class. As he watched his comrades ignominiously fly off some commoner, Bahru realized that this could turn out to be an embarrassment to the Empire. Activating a double-stone sword spell, the guy in the strange headdress decided to show these upstarts how to fight. At the same moment, a creepy, shadowy skull appeared above his head. Bahru immediately fell into a stupor from the fear that poured over his entire body. "If it's just a duel, we'll accept it. But if you cross the line, be prepared to die," Jade warned, preparing to use a deadly spell at any second. Petrified with horror, Bahru tried to figure out what kind of magic this was in the first place. "Is it a shadow sword?" Puzzled, the guy in the strange headdress asked Jade why he wasn't with the representative members. Hearing such an unexpected question, Ella and Jade looked at each other. The guy then explained that they have a lot of outstanding friends and they are definitely not going to lose. That was when Bahru realized that he had been lied to all this year. Whoever had said that the kingdom was short on talent this year either didn't know what he was saying or was blatantly lying. "What did I just see?" A woman's voice rang out, sending shivers down the back of the guy in the strange headdress. Staring ominously at Bara, the gray-haired girl asked if he was scared. "Are the students of the Great Empire scared of the kingdom?" That girl with the eye patch is named Ryusei, and she was ranked 1st in the freshman ranking in the Imperial Magic Academy. Upon seeing their classmate, the 3 students tried to justify themselves by saying that they were not scared at all. Unfortunately, Ryusei had already seen them demonstrate the disgrace of the Empire. In that case, they would have to pay for it. With a wave of her hand, the gray-haired girl activated a powerful spell and directed it at her classmates. That's when the three of them realized they were finished. Just as suddenly, the eighth form of the shadow sword, the shield, appears in front of them. Surprisingly, this spell easily blocked Ryusei's attack. Realizing that they had just been saved by a student of the Royal Academy, Bahru asked why he had done so. Jade in turn explained that it had gone too far. If he hadn't blocked that attack, it wouldn't have ended in one injury. What are you talking about? Attack? Blocked? What? Ryusei asked perplexedly. Asking this jerk not to give himself the illusion that he was able to block her attack, the girl explained that it was just a warm-up. The real attack she would perform right now. Not knowing what this crazy girl was doing, Jade noticed that things were getting out of control. Leaning his palms against the ground, Jade activated the eighth form of the shadow sword again. Meanwhile, Ryusei had already finished preparing one of her most powerful spells. Chris wanted to help his classmate fend off this attack, but as it later turned out, he was unable to block a blow of this level. Be that as it may, the nobleman still tried to use his magic on Jade's shield. Eerily looking at the two of them, Ryusei asked if they really meant to say that they would be able to stop an attack of this level to some extent. Only, unfortunately, they were not destined to withstand the blow of the magical power of the first student of the Imperial Academy. As soon as Ryusei directed all her power at Jade, the guy had to bounce aside to prevent that terrifying magic from catching up with him. Even with Chris's help, he was unable to deal with this attack. On top of that, his shield broke from just one hit, the loud rumbling sound of Ryusei's magic power hitting the people nearby. Gawkers began to gather around the children who were fighting and cheering for the Imperial students. Beginning to charge the spell again, Ryusei suggested that Jade try to block the blow since he was so cocky. Only despair awaits those who bring shame upon the Empire. Jade sat on the ground, unable to move out of fear. The next blow with magic power was going to be fatal to him. However, all of a sudden, Ryusei's magic power simply disappeared. High in the air came Rika's voice in a slight breeze. The very next second, the guy stuck a huge sword into the ground right in front of Ryusei's fist, thus stopping her attack. Landing on the hilt of his sword, Riki advised the stranger to step back if she didn't want to get hurt. Immediately after these words, he activated a hurricane spell that threw the enemy back to a safe distance. Barely able to stand on her feet, a shocked Ryusei asked who did it. Who managed to make her magical power disappear? That's me, Riki answered confidently. But after shutting that idiot's freak up, Ryusei said that someone like him couldn't do something like that. It is a more powerful and massive magical force, and that terrifying aura was coming from that short boy standing in the alley nearby. Jurian was the one who made the magic power of the first student of the Imperial Academy disappear completely. Looking closely at that boy's face, Ryusei immediately realized that it was his doing. Shouting for Jurian to come out for a fair fight, the gray-haired girl promised to use all her power against him to test how good he really was. As suddenly, Ryusei heard someone's unfamiliar voice right next to her ear. Putting her hand on the girl's head, Hyo-1 said that she likes to watch spectacular fights too, but the real clarification will happen in a friendly competition. As a teacher, she can't pretend that she doesn't see the current dispute between the contestants. And while former warrior Hyo-1 enjoyed touching this girl's soft hair, Ryusei had no way of understanding how this woman managed to sneak up from behind so silently. Realizing that there was nothing more for them to do here, the first student of the Imperial Academy ordered her classmates to get out of here. They'll see each other in a friendly competition with the kingdom's people. Then there will be no mercy. When the three men left, Jurian walked over to Jade and held out his hand to him, asking if he was okay. Taking his friend's hand, the magical swordsman thanked him for his help. This girl's magical power seemed to disappear in an instant. The same thing happened this morning when Jurian fought against Chris. He eliminated the explosion of magical power with literally one fist movement. Now Jade was finally convinced of how amazing this boy was. At the same time, while Jurian was helping his classmate to his feet, Riki walked over to his sword, which he thrust right in front of Ryusei's fist. What he saw threw him into a stupor. His sword didn't crack for some reason. Apparently, it happened the moment Ryusei struck it with her fist. But what was most strange was that she was only able to destroy such a sturdy sword with a normal strike without using magic power. Turning back to Jurian, Riki advised him to keep his guard up in the upcoming competition. Of course, Jurian had no idea what the Son of the Wind was carrying. A short while later, the interchange room. Royal Academy of Magic, first-year representatives. Tensely looking at these five, Bahru realized that they were probably even stronger than the guy with the shadow sword. They were real monsters. Ignoring his would-be rivals, Jurian immediately started looking for something to eat around here. Also attending the event was third-year senior Dias, the top-ranked student athlete in the nation. Noticing Princess Saruchi, he approached her and greeted her with a respectful manner. However, the girl asked him to feel free to speak casually. She was not a princess at present, but an ordinary student. Then, laughing, Deus remarked that Saruti had grown a lot. Meanwhile, walking up to Jurian, Mu explained that Deus was the person who took first place overall. And in fact, he's the only outstanding third-year student. Although, Mu still feels like she's stronger than him. Jurian himself, on the other hand, was greatly amused by this dude's hairstyle, which looks like a three-pointed spear. Having gotten the attention of the students, Hyo-won decided to check if everyone was in place. Only a third-year student. In addition to him, 4 sophomores came here. And finally, as many as 5 guys from their freshman year of college. Only 10 representatives from the kingdom and all here. When Deus greeted the teacher, remarking how they hadn't seen each other in a while, Hyo-won said she had high hopes for him. Well, it's time for the inaugural competition to begin. First of all, the professor representing the Empire welcomed the distinguished guests from different countries who came to support the participants. This man is a professor from the Imperial Academy, and his name is Khazar. For the past 7 years, the Empire and Kingdom have held an annual friendly competition. The competition not only strengthens the friendship between the two countries, but also serves as an important event where students from each country can learn from each other and grow. But with the kingdom being flooded with monsters recently, there seems to be nothing for the students of the Empire to learn this year, be that as it may. Solemnly raising his hands, Khazar asked the honored guests from other countries not to worry, telling them that the Empire possessed a power that could withstand the attack of a level 5 monster. From this event to future monster battles, the Empire will take the lead in protecting everyone. Welcome to the Empire! Professor Jerry from the Royal School of Magic came out to the audience next. While he was giving his speech, which was different from the past professor's speech, the director of the Imperial Academy had already managed to praise Khazar for his excellent performance. Thanking the headmaster for the smell of the value, Khazar remarked that no doubt the kingdom had gotten a kick out of his speech. However, Jerry clearly disagreed with his opponent's country professor's opinion. Speaking on stage, he remarked that everyone came here today knowing 2 things. First, the kingdom has students who have successfully survived the threat of level 4 on their own. This achievement will go down in history, proving once again the greatness of the kingdom. And secondly, the Empire is currently on a losing streak of 3 straight matches against the realm. If through this friendly competition, the Empire could learn even a little bit about the magic of the great kingdom of Rirente, their country would undoubtedly have a great magic academy. Let this friendly match be a realization that in order to protect others, you must first become strong. Well, that concludes the speech. Now, in the time remaining, both countries will build camaraderie. The competition itself will take place in 2 days. When the boring speeches were over, Jurian suggested that the others go and have a good meal. It's a good time to try the grilled king crab and clams. At the same time, one of the sophomores approached Professor Hyo-won, saying that he was a little worried. The elite sophomore class is currently hospitalized after being attacked by the villainous Yurisan-kun. Thanks to this, the ordinary sophomores have become representatives. They fear they may become a liability to their own kingdom. Plus, the Empire is in the midst of a 3-game losing streak in a friendly competition. They definitely intend to win this year, and so no one knows what foul tricks they have in store. And anyway, who would think to have a competition at this point when a level 4 monster has appeared? Hearing the sophomores talking, a shrimp-eating Jurian asked if that didn't mean they just had to win. Anyway, all problems solved, it was time to eat in peace. Princess Saruti agreed with her classmate and told the sophomores not to worry and to sit down at the table sooner rather than later. There was no way they would lose to the Empire, even with foul play. Also, don't forget that the kingdom has participants who might even enjoy this kind of foul play. Echoing her students' words, Hyo-won explained that a person's strength lies not in position or status, but in their essence. It doesn't matter if you're in the elite class or if you're in this position because you're outstanding. These guys are participants, not a substitute for an elite class. That's why Hyo-won has faith in everyone who has been chosen to represent the kingdom in these competitions. From real fears to great expectations, the Kingdom versus Empire competition. 2 days flew by, and the 8th friendly magic competition began. A friendly competition in the first round arena, the moment everyone has been waiting for has finally arrived. It's time for the first match of the 3rd year to begin, 1 versus 1. Deus will speak for the kingdom. Calling out to the student who had entered the arena, Hyo-won asked if he remembered what would happen to him if he lost. Right, in that case, Deus dies. However, he never loses. The director of the Imperial Magic Academy, Lee Lerwan, knows that this guy is undoubtedly a strong opponent. But in his current state, Baga Nuzag, a third-year representative of the Imperial School of Magic, has a good chance against Deus. These two have met before in competition as many as 2 times, and Baga Nuzag has lost each time. Now it was time to prevent this series of defeats. When the participants entered the arena, the commentator said that the friendly competition consists of a total of 3 rounds. The academy that wins 2 matches will be the ultimate winner. That is why the first match is very important. Admiring the atmosphere in the arena, Chi Li noticed how tense it was. Magus, who was standing next to her, remembered that this was kind of the first time Chi Li was watching the competition live. The head of the academy decided to ask the woman if she knew why the kingdom had been defeating the empire for the past 3 years. To this, Chi Li replied that maybe it's because the students of Rairente are very strong. But that wasn't quite the right answer. Rairente had won 3 years in a row because Deus was born in the kingdom, not anywhere else. Stepping into the arena, Deus was glad to see Nuza again and asked how he was doing. The Empire student in turn revealed that he had gotten even stronger since last year. When the match started, Nuzak promised that after today his opponent would never forget his name. In the next instant, the third-year student simultaneously activated physical resistance, magic resistance, enhanced physical strength, increased movement speed, steel skin, natural healing, enhanced intuition, and clear vision. A buff is magic that increases the wielder's abilities. Typically, a magic buff is limited to 3 to 5 buffs. If a person receives more boosts, their body cannot handle it. Also today, Nuzag demonstrated an 8-fold buff to everyone. It's an incredibly huge effort, so even Chi Li couldn't stand the admiration and shouted that she wanted to see it up close. Yes, this guy's abilities are truly outstanding, but it's not enough. Looking at his opponent contentedly, Deus realized that apparently Nuza wanted to be remembered. And if he really wants to stay in Deus's memories, he's going to have to show all he can do. Trying to withstand the power of the 8-fold buff, Nuzak saw the Realm student activate the Reaper's Scythe. This weapon dissects magic itself. Hence, if this fight drags on, depleting Nuzag's magic will be his downfall. In that case, he should end this fight with a single blow. Noticing the way the Imperial Academy student leaned on his arms, Ricky wondered what the hell that pose was. Jurian in turn explained that it looked very much like a running stand. He was probably a ninja of some sort. Smiling contentedly, Li Lerwang remarked that the guys from the kingdom were probably as surprised as he was at one time. That afternoon, Nuzak showed him his special charging pose. The boy explained to the teacher that Deus was incredibly strong. In the last 2 years, Nuzag had never stood a chance against him. Agreeing with this, Li Lerwan still reminded his disciple that this year was different. His 8-fold buff would easily be able to destroy Deus, except that Nuzag himself doesn't think it's enough. The director fully believes that the 8-fold buff is undoubtedly a powerful magic. In theory, even Deus can't walk away unscathed after a direct hit. But there's one problem. Nuzag simply doesn't have enough time to hit his opponent directly. Amplifications of 5 or more times will undoubtedly increase strength, but the body of an ordinary person simply won't be able to cope with such a load. Having gone to great lengths to accomplish this, Nuzag is now able to deal 8 buffs at once for 30 seconds, which is an amazing result in itself. That's right, to win, Nuzag must strike Deus within 30 seconds of activating the enhancements. Unfortunately, all of this only works in theory. In a battle situation, things will be different, and Nuzag will have to think about how he can strike the enemy in the first place. That's why the guy came up with a special killing stance that would allow him to strike within the first 5 seconds. With the charge he's developed, he'll be able to get to Deus in 5 seconds before he even remembers. Seeing his disciple's stance for the first time, Li Lerwang couldn't believe his eyes. Only after a while did he realize what this guy had been doing all year. He'd been devising a plan specifically to defeat Deus. Charge was designed specifically for this competition. Now Deus has no chance of defeating Nuzag. Meanwhile, Nuzag had already managed to activate the 8-fold buff and then began to prepare a charge. The stance he developed is the best posture for running at top speed. When you add the 8-fold buff, Nuzag's destructive power becomes equal to or even greater than that of the strongest hero. Praising his opponent for his persistence, Deus muttered that he too wanted to get this over with as soon as possible. Magus, who was watching the bout, noticed that Nuza was using the increase in strength and body strengthening to crouch and bounce. If you think about it that way, It's a truly intimidating technique. But unfortunately, this guy didn't pick the best opponent. Not a few seconds later, Nuzag suddenly stopped. Taking only one step forward, Deus took a sweep of the Reaper's scythe to meet his opponent. In the blink of an eye, the scythe blade sliced the Imperial student in half. Seeing this, director Lee Lerwin turned pale with horror. But Deus asked those present not to worry about this guy. The Reaper's scythe cuts only magic, not human flesh. Nuzag was defeated in less than 30 seconds, and the winner of the first match was Deus from the Royal Academy of Magic. Of course, this guy will always remember tonight's match, and his opponent. Immediately after the first match, the Imperial Academy director was summoned to the operations room of the Imperial team's friendly competition. The chairmen were outraged that, in addition to the embarrassing defeat, the match lasted less than 30 seconds. This is a sign of incompetence on the part of the coach. The Empire must win this year, as a fourth straight loss is simply unacceptable. While the kingdom is overrun by monsters, while the Empire is under the suspicion of other countries, the initiative must be taken over by the Empire itself. But what was happening right now? The ace of the School of Magic, a third-year student, was defeated in less than 30 seconds. Who will take responsibility? Lee Lerwin truly thought that his student would be able to at least get close to the power of Deus. But as it turns out, this student from the Royal Academy is a creature that can't be reached no matter how hard you try. The only thing left for the principal to do was to promise the chairman that the Empire would win the remaining freshman and sophomore matches. The real competition doesn't start until now. And before Lee Lerwin left, one of the chairmen reminded him that if the Empire lost in this friendly competition, the blame would not only fall on him. Therefore, the director should try his best. At the same time, while looking at the list of upcoming matches, Hyo 1 noticed that there were still 2 more competitions left between the first and second courses. This means that the kingdom only has 1 more match left to win in order to win. Then, turning to the sophomores, the teacher asked them not to let this chance fall into the hands of the juniors. The guys were immediately energized by Hyo 1's inspiring speech and prepared for the second match. For Errol in particular, this match is a crucial one. As you may recall, last year, Lerrel beat up all the students in the advanced class, forcing them to submit to himself. Errol turned out to be one of those who gave up almost immediately. Since that day last year, he had vowed not to run. That said, yesterday the kid showed his weak side again. Today was his opportunity to be reborn. At the moment, the kingdom leads by a score of 1-0. Will the Empire fall like this? Royal Academy's sophomore opponent will be Vol Zaha and his charges. But apparently, Zaha himself is not very happy that instead of a normal opponent, this year he will have to fight some scum. When the Imperial student asked to bring Lerrel here, Errol approached him and politely explained that Lerrel was currently having fun with his mommy. Obviously, such impertinent words made Zach very angry. The second-year 4-on-4 matchup is about to begin. Kingdom versus Empire, 2 of the strongest opponents. The fierce friendly rivalry begins right now. Kingdom has taken the initiative and is dominating at the moment. Can the Empire win the remaining 2 matches, or will it be a clean win for the Kingdom? The second match that could very well decide the fate of the friendly competition, the sophomore 4-on-4 match, begins right now. The objectives of the Kingdom are to win this match and end the competition right now. If the Empire's team loses, it will only mean death for them. Therefore, they must show their pride to everyone. Taking an annoyed look at his opponent, Vol Zaha noticed that he didn't even have an elite class badge. Is this a joke or something? Even more angry, the Imperial student ordered Errol to go get Lerrel now. At the same moment, an intimidation spell was directed at the royal participants. Resisting this psychological attack, Errol told his comrades not to retreat for anything. He reminded his classmates that they had come here as representatives of the Rerente kingdom. Watching the reactions of their opponents, the Imperial students laughed, noting how amused these guys were at how scared they were. Be that as it may, the Imperials are going to stick to the orders of the team leader. In this match, they must win as brutally and ruthlessly as possible. This is the moment when outstanding skills must be displayed. Each of the sophomores at Imperial Academy has a distinctive insignia. All 4 have huge scars on their faces. The reason lies in last year's competition and Lerrel. That day, Lerrel went crazy again and started slashing his opponents with his dagger, even though the match was already over. The Imperial sophomores have spent a whole year honing their skills to get revenge on Lerrel. However, now they would have to fight some bugs, not him. Realizing that the enemy was about to attack, Errol and his partners took their positions. Their team has 3 swordsmen and 1 ranged fighter, and so the essence of the formation is to fight while protecting the mage as much as possible. With shame, looking at the 4 of them, Zaha asked his boys if they would really have to fight these kids. After saying that, he only took a single step forward. In an instant, the Imperial student somehow found himself in the very center of the royal participants' formation. Errol and his comrades couldn't even see their opponent begin to move. Still unable to believe what was happening, an irritated Zaha explained that he had spent a year preparing to defeat Leril. He won't be able to wash away the humiliation he received last year until he personally deals with that guy with his own hands. And understandably, bugs like these four scumbags won't be able to stop Zack. As soon as the Imperial members pounced on the enemy, he swung his arm and threw them off in different directions. Even now, Errol couldn't understand how this dude managed to hit them all at the same time. But rising to his feet, the guy with the headband shouted to his partners not to be distracted. There was no way they could be distracted now, and the defense had to be deployed immediately. Looking at the royal students trying to get up after his attack, Zaha wondered if they were definitely sophomores like himself. Their level is simply not up to par for this competition. When all his companions had risen to their feet, the mage from the royal team told Iral that he had not been attacked and was unharmed. As soon as this guy was suddenly very close, the mage instinctively jumped away from him and didn't attack. That was why he was unaffected by Zack's attack. It can only mean that their opponent is using a skill that allows them to attack people nearby. Noticing the way the royal participants were talking amongst themselves, the Imperial students realized that these guys seemed to be up to something. Unfortunately, these three wouldn't be getting into the fight. After all, the director of the Magic Academy ordered that the leader of the team should single-handedly defeat the kingdom, thus humiliating them as much as possible. Errol noticed something amiss on the battlefield almost immediately. Keeping his eyes on Zack, he told his partners that they had a chance to end this match with a win of their own. Such unexpected words from the commander surprised the royal students. Errol doesn't know why, but Zaha is fighting alone. This could be a good chance for the kingdom. Telling everyone to listen to him carefully, the guy in the armband announced that they only had one opponent with the peculiarity of attacking at close range. It was time to prepare Formation 3 and took advantage of the enemy's weakness to long-range attacks. "Are you saying I'm weak against ranged attacks?" Zaha clarified, having heard the enemy talking. Standing confidently in place, the Imperial student vowed not to counterattack for 30 seconds and let his opponents try to defeat him in that time. The royal students immediately suspected that it might be a trap. But, reminding his comrades that this might be their only chance, the mage shouted to them not to stand still and to attack this guy faster. When the count got to 28 seconds, the royal challengers pounced on Zack from all sides. Suddenly, however, the Imperial student ended the countdown. Saying the number 0, he activated a melee spell. With another sweep of his arm, he threw all of his attackers away from him, knocking the weapons out of their hands. Seeing this, the mage from the royal team wanted to already run to help his comrades. However, in the blink of an eye, Zaha advised this guy to worry better about himself than these bugs. The mage didn't even take the time to realize where this guy had come from to appear so suddenly beside him. Striking again, Zaha knocked out the last opponent. Watching the battle, Chili noticed that there was a big difference in skills between the participants. Confirming this, Magus added that, after all, the difference between a regular class and an advanced class is quite large. Beginning to worry about the students, Chili asked if it was okay to continue the match like this. If things continued like this, the Kingdom students would only suffer even more. Magus in turn reminded them that their coach is Hyo Won. All they have to do is trust her judgment. Meanwhile, Hyo Won herself only continued to watch as her students were brutally beaten by the Imperial members. Walking over to the still unconscious Errol, Zaha delivered another fist strike to his face. Then, with a few swings of his hand, he unleashed a series of attacks on the poor guy. By then, Errol was bleeding all over. As the boy fell face first into the ground, Zaha, approaching him, remarked that now these scum must have realized for sure. No matter how hard people like them try, they can't beat an elite course. All they have to do is crawl on the ground like bugs and beg for mercy. I see. I know very well that I'm practically no different from an ordinary bug. Errol, who had miraculously remained conscious, suddenly spoke up. No matter how hard he tries, this guy knows better than anyone that he's not going to make it into the advanced class. Everyone is watching this match and will probably mock this kid, wondering why he's getting into a fight he can't win. Everyone has known for a while now that Errol doesn't stand a chance. Nevertheless, he's not going to give up. That Errol who once fled in fear no longer exists. Today he evolves, and even if he escapes, he will have to live as a weak individual again. Looking at his opponent in despair, the guy with the bandage on his head shouted that he wouldn't run away anymore. The next second, Zack's bloody fist flew into his face. Throwing this stubborn guy a few meters away from him, the Imperial student said that in that case he would just kill him. From the power of that blow, Errol bounced off the ground several times and flew almost all the way to the end of the arena. A huge cloud of dust rose above the battlefield. And when the fog cleared, everyone saw that despite his many wounds, Errol continued to stand on his feet. Trying hard not to fall to the ground, the guy with the bandage on his head shouted that he would never give up. Is that so? Zaha muttered sternly, glaring irritably at his enemy. In that case, he has no other choice. First, he'll break that scum's leg so that he can never get up again. However, as soon as Zaha raised his fist to strike, his magic simply disappeared for some reason. Looking up, the Imperial student saw an unfamiliar boy in a Royal Academy uniform in front of him. Perplexed by this sudden appearance, Zaha asked the kid who he even was. Did he want to lose his legs too? In response, the first-year representative of the Royal Academy of Magic, Jurian, only looked at the Imperial with a smirk.
Pet the cat.